Hi, this is Kimberly. Fotis Dulos is in critical condition following an attempted suicide on January 28, 2020. Attorney Norm Pattis gave an update on Fotis Dulos following his bond hearing on the afternoon of January 29, 2020. The following are news reports since Dulos' suicide attempt, and they are in reverse order from today and yesterday, beginning with Pattis's press conference. Thank you for listening.
Situation is grim. Mr. Dulos is hospitalized, and we're hoping that he will recover. I'm not going to comment further on his medical condition. Today's agreement is a recognition of the difficulty of his medical condition. We have agreed that he can be in rearrest status when and if he is capable of returning to court. The court indicated it's open to hearing our motion to vacate the rearrest. In other words, that will return the clock to where it is. The state will not seek an increase in bond. At that point, we will address the issues in the bond revocation motion, including the claim that there is inadequate security to hold the bond. Those of you who've bought houses are aware of things called title searches. Our view is, with respect to this bond, if there's an issue, it's between the bond company and its insurer, the secondary insurer. It's not an issue for Mr. Dulos. But candidly, his medical condition is dire, and we look forward to the opportunity to have that fight. And obviously, he's in our prayers. Family members of his will arrive in New York from Greece tonight, and we will await word from physicians about what is reasonable to expect. Beyond that, we remain committed, obviously, to the proposition that Mr. Dulos is not guilty of the crimes charged, and hope that he recovers so that we can vindicate him in a court of law. We've secured the services of Ira Judelson from New York, who I should have called in the first instance. I've worked with him years ago in a case, and frankly didn't call him, but he's here now. And we are confident that if we get the opportunity to return on bond, we'll be back to where we were earlier in the week. So having said that, Helen, I know you always have a question.
What impact does this have on Mr. Dulos? You talked about the NYPD guarding him. Could you just clarify for us what this means practically for?
He's not in custody in New York, and this does not change his custodial status. He's there are guards posted because some reporters have tried to sneak in and see him, and we're aware of at least one other individual who thinks he's going to get rich writing a book on Fotis. So there are officers there, and the hospital is very mindful of the security, and they've, as near as I can tell, done a wonderful job providing care to Mr. Dulos.
You say the situation is dire, but can you give us more of an update? Obviously he's still in critical condition. Have doctors told you that they're going to be able to update you so you can update us? Since they're not giving updates at the hospital.
I only play lawyer on TV. I don't play doctor. I'm not going to comment on his medical condition.
No, what did you mean about doing this so his family could see him? What did that mean?
If his bond were revoked, that would involve repercussions on an interstate basis, and he would have been in custody in New York. That would have limited the ability of his family to see him. By not being in custody, the hospital controls who gets to see him. If he were in custody, Department of Corrections persons would have been placed out the door. They would have made the rules. So we're trying to maintain access to him and his family at this very critical time.
Is it clear that he faced the threat of possibly going to jail is what triggered this incident yesterday?
I can't speculate on what led him to do what he apparently did. We had no indication that this was possible, and we are as shocked as you are by this.
Norm, you said yesterday in an interview with the NBC network that you blamed yourself partially. Can you explain that?
A lawyer's commitment is to be a shepherd to his client and to walk them through the valley of the shadow of death. And sometimes you make a call where you think your client is self-destructive, that is based on the best judgment that you can see. I saw nothing that led me to believe that, and so I look back and wonder what I missed.
Does Fotis have a living will? And
I'm not going to comment on those issues at this point.
be in charge of making any medical decisions?
We're working on that now.
Have police been into
We are not involved with his children. His last words to us on the topic were he loves them and misses them very much. And
Was he alone yesterday morning?
I don't want to comment on that.
Have police been inside the Farmington home and have they found any kind of a note?
You'd have to ask the police. Thank you very much, folks.
In the back of the home, laying on the ground. He was wearing jeans. They had pulled up a t-shirt and started performing CPR on him for a good 10 to 15 minutes. So if you have our drone shot up, you could see crews. Okay, so you are looking at that photo right now where you can see that yellow tarp and there's 2 blue tents that have been set up. This, what do you think, Tom? Maybe about 5 minutes ago that crews set this all up? Yeah, about 5 minutes ago they set this all up. And then more police started coming. We witnessed fire personnel also here. And then 2 ambulances came through that we did see. So, again, multiple sources have told us that Fotis Dulos attempted to commit suicide at his Jefferson Crossing home. And we did witness a man laying on the ground and personnel performing CPR. But there seems to be a lot of activity going on right now. You can see these, if you're back out live now, you can see these 2 Tahoes just pulling up. But state police and local police have now shut down the road. It looks like no traffic can come through here now. I don't know, Tom, if you want to just zoom to the right here, you could see that officer is now blocking the road. That's just happening moments ago here. But again, a lot is unfolding here at the Dulos home. We, of course, will continue to follow this. We'll be out here. Any new information we get, we, of course, will bring it to you right away. Kara. Hi.
So he must have called her. That's why she came back.
Called who?
His girlfriend, or whoever that is. The new girlfriend.
Hi there. Sorry about that. Yeah. Anything you can say? I mean,
I don't know what the hell I want to say. I don't know anything anybody else says.
well, you know, I guess, so I did ask my colleague Matt, because he's down at Stanford Court, if anyone's reached out to Norm Pattis, and I guess...
His lawyer is there. Kevin Smith is there.
Is here?
No, it's Stanford.
Oh, okay.
Oh, tell him that he's dead?
Yeah.
I can tell Jerry to go ahead and do that.
Now, with this, well, you can maybe talk, if you want, about this emergency bond hearing. I mean, did he have to be in Stanford for that?
Oh, he would have, yeah. He would have been brought down there.
Okay, okay. Do you want to just do a quick little, and it's not live or anything, is it?
Sure, if you want.
Okay.
I was just going to see if... Hey, what's going on?
Yeah. Oh, I told him it wasn't live. I told him it wasn't live. I know, but he doesn't really have much to say on this. Like, what is he going to say about this?
question of whether or not his legal license would be taken away today. So there's a lot happening on a criminal and judicial level in this case. We can't speculate what happened, but if just the fact that he was on house arrest, there were so many viewers on Facebook and everywhere else saying, how did he get out? This is a $6 million bond. Why is this allowed to happen in a murder case? If you're on house arrest, is there any, in your knowledge, any effort to make sure that a suicide attempt couldn't happen?
No, you really couldn't be, Kara. The fact would be to monitor the individual, to make sure the individual stays within the confines of that residence, the four walls, if you will, of that residence, and not leave it. The GPS monitoring is the only external thing that can determine and make sure that the person stays in that place.
Does that GPS monitoring have, like our Apple Watches, any connection to someone's heart rate or some notification that they could be in medical duress? Like, how did we?
I believe so. It's really GPS location to locate.
Okay. So there wouldn't be a notification if something started to go wrong with Fotis Dulos medically. What I just want to describe for you, Lieutenant Vance, because I know you can't see. We're just watching many law enforcement officers, both in uniform and plainclothes, walking in and around the residence, and specifically in an area that is now, they've put up some tents to obscure any view from drone video, and also some tarps as they continue to look like what they're trying to investigate a scene.
Yeah, I believe right now that what I'm aware of is they are probably securing that entire scene, not letting anyone in, anyone out, preserving evidence, if you will, of what may have occurred there, and that certainly is something that's normal in a situation where a medical emergency is reported and all the proper response is done, by the community, life-saving efforts, if you will, and I would suspect that an investigation will be undertaken regardless of what the situation is right now.
And at this point, we're still waiting. Obviously, Matt McFarland is down at Stamford Superior Court where this bond was supposed to happen. I know that the litigation is not your purview, but let me just ask you, as he was being brought back in, we saw the judge was not happy with him taking pieces of a memorial at the end of his street. He said, that's strike two. Strike three, you go back to prison. I'll double the bond or something like that. And we now know that they were being brought back for some financial underwriting issues of the bond. What could that mean, and what would be happening in court today with regard to this bond hearing that no one really knew about until this morning?
Yeah, I understand that there was some issue with the $6 million bond and the underwriting of that bond, and I believe that was probably reviewed by the court, and hence he was called back. He was being called back into court to go over that situation. That really could have meant that if the bond was not in place as was required by the court, that he would have to surrender and be incarcerated until it could be relatively elevated or repaired or fixed or whatever it might take. But the probability or possibility did exist that an appearance today in court would require reincarceration.
Okay. Lieutenant Vance, I have just gotten information from our producers. We are hearing from multiple sources that Fotis Dulos is dead, which would match what we are seeing on the screen as we witnessed a CPR attempt. We were told by Courtney Zeller she witnessed CPR going on for as much as 10 minutes. And now we've seen the scene get much calmer there as we've been talking to you for more than the last half hour. If you were joining us at the top of the noon broadcast around 12:05, we actually witnessed on air through our drone video a CPR attempt going on. We are now hearing from multiple sources that Fotis Dulos, the accused murderer in the case of the murder of his estranged wife, Jennifer Farber Dulos, that he is dead. We had heard that he had tried to commit suicide, and what we understand right now from multiple sources, he seems to have been successful. You're looking live at the home on Jefferson Crossing in Farmington, and as Lieutenant Vance was telling us, they're securing that scene. It is now a scene that will be needed to be recorded with pictures and evidence and everything else that you would imagine in a crime scene. This is on the day that Fotis Dulos was supposed to go back to court for what appeared to be a spur-of-the-moment bond hearing where there were some questions about the financial backing about his bond. We now know that Fotis Dulos is dead. We're going to go live now to Channel 3's Courtney Zeller, who is outside his residence. Courtney, what have you heard as this news of Fotis Dulos' deaths is spreading?
Well, it's still an active scene out here, Kara, of course, and I know you at home have been watching that drone video, and like Lieutenant Vance said, that they did secure the scene. We saw it, that they put up a few tents, and they put up that yellow tarp. Police are still out here. A bunch rushed in not too long ago. I do want to give you a timeline, though. Let me take you back about an hour now. So somewhere between like 11 and 11:30, one of my colleagues was here watching the scene because we told you that Fotis Dulos was expected in court in Stanford around noontime today. She had seen a woman at the home, at his home. She had left maybe about 11:30. Then shortly after that, that's when we started noticing a few local police cars coming through here and a few officers. Then state police arrived on scene, and that's when we saw in between that time that there was a man laying on the ground. They were performing CPR for at least 15 minutes. And then they started putting up those tents. That woman returned. We saw her in video that we captured, and she was running in the back of the house where this was all unfolding, where police were doing CPR. They had the man on the ground, and we witnessed that firsthand. But if you are just joining us, we are hearing from multiple sources that Fotis Dulos has been pronounced dead. He attempted to commit suicide today, and we are hearing that from those sources that apparently he was successful in that. I also talked to another defense attorney in this case, and he said he was expected to be in court. I know sometimes the defendant doesn't need to be in court for certain instances, but today he was supposed to appear in Stanford Superior Court. So no one's left the scene here on Jefferson Crossing in Farmington. Multiple police, as you can see. You're watching live right now. You can see those police cars are still out here, but it seems like it has become fairly quiet right now. There is a local police officer blocking the road here. I'm guessing if you live here, you can most likely go through. If you don't live here, you're going to have to go around. I know this is, I'm putting you on the spot, Tom, but there is a memorial over here. There's a bunch of flowers on that rock for Jennifer. So again, multiple sources confirming to us that Fotis Dulos has died. Kara, of course, any new information that we get, I will be sure to bring it to you right away. I've reached out to multiple sources to see what else they can tell us, and I will bring that to you as soon as I can. But for now, Kara, I'll send it back into you.
Thank you, Courtney Zeller. You're watching live outside the residence of Fotis Dulos, his mansion in Farmington, where we have confirmed that Fotis Dulos has died from a suicide attempt, which is no longer an attempt. He was successful. We can report that. We have a statement now that's being given to us on behalf of the family and friends of Jennifer Farber Dulos. It's just coming into me right now, and I would like to read it to you. Above all, we thank the Connecticut State Police and the New Canaan Police Department, as well as the assisting local departments, for their tireless commitment and diligent, painstaking work that have led to these arrests. Although that we are relieved that the wait for these charges is over for us, there is no, this is the past statement that they had, that there's no sense of closure. Nothing can bring Jennifer back. We miss her every day and will mourn forever her loss. We believe the arrest warrants will speak for themselves. That is the old family statement that we had from when the charges were coming, but I understand that a new statement is coming in regarding these events, and we'll wait for that. But we would like to join Lieutenant Paul Vance on the phone line again as this news is breaking on air that Fotis Dulos has died. We understood he committed suicide. And Lieutenant Vance, you were saying that everything we're seeing out there would be, the next step would be to preserve that area as a crime scene.
That's absolutely correct, Kara. If in fact, he's been pronounced dead. The facts would be that They would secure that scene, and it would be investigated as a crime scene. The entire scene would be examined, look for any evidence, look for any information, look for the how and where and why this occurred, to try to answer all the questions. It's going to be a situation that will involve, certainly local police, the medical examiner's office, and I'm certain that some state police will be involved also with New Canaan to try and see if there's any information whatsoever that will be helpful to answer the questions as I stated, but also to further the criminal investigation, which still is open and still is ongoing.
So who would be on scene performing this work right now as we look live outside this residence in Farmington where Fotis Dulos is dead?
Well, I'm sure the Farmington police have a contingent of people there to preserve the scene. That's first and foremost. The EMS personnel would have been involved in a pronouncement if that, in fact, took place at the home. And then the detectives from Farmington, I'm sure, assisted by whatever assistance they may need, and certainly the medical examiner is one. But over and above that, if they need assistance, or I'm sure the state police investigators would also be involved in doing anything that may be helpful in this case, but also looking to see if there's any evidence or information that might be there that would be helpful in the homicide investigation of Jennifer.
And I want to come back to that of what happens now to the case of the homicide investigation and the murder of Jennifer Dulos. But first, we just did witness the ambulance leaving the property. We saw the ambulance had pulled in some time ago, and we did not see the ambulance leave. We now know that's likely because Fotis Dulos was dead, and apparently the CPR attempts, which were lengthy, we observed that they were at least 10 minutes long, obviously were not successful. That ambulance left, and it was escorted by police. As we look live now, Lieutenant Vance, we're seeing more law enforcement vehicles start to leave the residence here at Jefferson Crossing. This is where he was allowed to be on house arrest. Now, it was strict house arrest. The bond had been modified and he could no longer even leave the residence, but some would say it's not exactly, wasn't a difficult circumstance living in this very large, beautiful home out in Farmington. He was not allowed to step outside without any permission. He was on strict home confinement. But just for the people who are just joining us, that would not mean he's under watch at every moment. So people are wondering how this could happen. He would be a free man within the confines of that residence. Is that correct, Lieutenant Vance?
Yeah, it certainly would. But I want to qualify that by simply saying that that GPS monitor is watched, and if he were to step foot outside that residence, that he would be violating the terms of his house arrest, if you will, and that would have been immediate reincarceration. There's no question. I think the judge made that very, very clear.
Absolutely. But he would be able to do, as we now know that he committed suicide, there is no way that law enforcement would have been able to monitor his every move inside the house, knowing that perhaps that was what he was doing this morning.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. There's, what he does inside the home is very, it's very difficult to determine, how his day went. But I think it's very important that we recognize the fact that this is a crime scene, and this also is a criminal investigation. And I believe that it's important to note that the investigation will try and determine what his movement was, who had contact with him, who he spoke with, any writings that he may have made. A whole host of things will be searched for and examined if they do exist, and hopefully they'll be able to answer all the questions as to how this occurred, when this occurred, why this occurred, and that'll be forthcoming, I'm sure.
In fact, you brought up my next question, Lieutenant Vance, that we are hearing on Facebook. A lot of people are commenting, was there a note? Could there have been a note? If there was a note, is that something that police, obviously they'll collect it, is it something that will eventually be released?
I'm sure it will, yes. It's a matter of, in criminal investigations like this, the transparency is important. This case, it must be noted that this case still causes two people who are presently under arrest and have been under arrest for this homicide also. So this is an active case. It is not a closed case because of what may have happened to Mr. Dulos. But suffice it to say that it is not going to impact the case negatively as far as the investigation is concerned. And hopefully, like I said, the investigation will maybe produce more information or maybe be helpful to investigators and in the homicide investigation as well as this one here in Farmington.
Where would the body of Fotis Dulos go?
Well, right now, by ambulance, it would go to a medical facility, and formal pronouncement by a medical doctor would take place. Then I'm sure that the remains will be transferred to the medical examiner office to do a full postmortem examination. That in and of itself may also produce information and be helpful to the investigators.
We don't know much about, other than we understand from multiple sources that Fotis Dulos committed suicide. We can see from the drone video that where that CPR attempt is going on appeared to be right outside the garage. We don't know anything other than Courtney Zeller witnessed a man whose white T-shirt had been pulled up as the CPR attempt was being made. So I'm sure we'll learn much more around the circumstances. But when you say this case still goes forward, you mean because there are 2 other suspects that are being tried with conspiracy to commit murder. Is that what you mean? Is this homicide investigation will continue because there are still 2 more living suspects?
That's absolutely correct, Cara. There are 2 suspects or 2 accused, if you will, in the homicide case of Jennifer. That case is still active and still moving forward, and even active as we speak today. And now this case will be a secondary case, if you will, but it's individualized. It's an individualized criminal investigation as to why this occurred, how this occurred, and exactly all the questions that one would have would be answered hopefully by investigators as they begin to examine the scene, examine all the facts and circumstances that went along, with the incident, and try to answer every single question that may come to one's mind.
We understand that there was a bond hearing today, and we can't speculate what would have happened there, but we do understand that the judge, as you were alluding to, Lieutenant Vance, was very strict the last time and sort of warning Fotis Dulos that you have 2 strikes, 3 strikes, you're out. So we know he was being brought back possibly today for a review of whether or not the financial backing of his bond was sufficient. That's, I imagine, something that they'll be looking at as a possible motive.
Absolutely. I mean, the appearance today, I believe, had something to do with the bond, the $6 million bond that he was released on. There was something that the court was looking at, and certainly that will be part of this investigation here in Farmington as to what he was going for, what he was going to be discussing in court with his lawyer, with the judge, and did it have an impact as to decisions he may have made or things he may have done. But again, that's all something that investigators will do piece by piece, step by step, trying to put this puzzle together to make a picture as to what the story was here.
Lieutenant Vance, if you could stand by, we want to go live now to Stamford Superior Court, where Fotis Dulos was supposed to make an appearance today, to Matt McFarland. We're going to stay with this case until we get further information from police, who we hope will have a news conference at some point in the near future. But in the meantime, Matt, what's happening now at court?
Yeah, the situation very fluid here at court, Kara. As you were saying, sort of caught a lot of folks off guard. As you were saying, folks were expecting Fotis Dulos to come here for a 12 o'clock bond hearing to Stamford Superior Court. When Channel 3 sort of showed the folks what was going on, that was the first time a lot of the marshals inside had sort of been given this heads up that there was activity at Fotis Dulos' Farmington house, and that was the reason why he wasn't here as expected. We did see one of his co-counsels, Kevin Smith, arrive here at court earlier in the morning. We have not seen from him since. I've reached out to Norm Pattis as well. Have not heard back from him either. But again, he was supposed to be here for a 12 o'clock bond hearing to address sort of some issues, some questions about the security of his bond, that $6 million bond. If you recall, just last week, Fotis Dulos and his defense team, they were here in court. One of the issues Judge Gary White had with him was the fact that he sort of violated the terms of his release, the earlier conditions of his release. He was on house arrest. The issue was earlier this month they say that he removed some items from a memorial for his missing wife, which was near his Farmington home. Judge White telling him what he did was stupid, advising him not to do it again, saying he's already had 2 issues, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, you're out. So the first issue was the issue with him not charging his GPS monitoring, ankle monitoring batteries correctly. So again, he was supposed to be back here today. Obviously, that didn't happen. Inside the courtroom, they had sort of moved everybody out. The camera that was supposed to be in there for this appearance, that was removed as well. So again, this is all still very fluid here as the word spreads down here to Stamford Superior Court about Fotis Dulos and his death. We're live with the mobile newsroom in Stamford. Matt McFarland, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Matt, just a quick question because you're at the courthouse. We are used to seeing Norm Pattis very visible in every Fotis Dulos appearance. He is very comfortable talking to the media, often is the first one to speak. Have we heard it all from Norm Pattis?
No, I reached out to him. I was told that he is on another case out of state. So that is why Kevin Smith was here. Kevin has dealt with the bond issue before. He was here when he made bond the first time and the second time as well. So he has sort of handled that part of the case with Norm as well. But no response from the legal team so far today.
Matt McFarland live for us outside Stamford Superior Court, where Fotis Dulos was due to appear today before he committed suicide. Thank you, Matt. We're going to go out to Lieutenant Vance now, who is joining us on the Eyewitness News phone line. He is one of our experts as we handle these criminal cases. And Lieutenant Vance, as you're digesting all of this information, are there any other cases like this where you've had a high-profile murder suspect commit suicide? And then what can we expect to happen next?
Well, we certainly have seen that in high priority or high profile cases around the country in recent months, actually. And quite frankly, many people think that as a result of the death of the main suspect in this homicide case of Jennifer, that the case will be done, be over with. And that can't be further from the truth. There are still questions that need to be answered. There are still detectives and investigators from departments that are still working on this case, still attempting to answer questions such as where is Jennifer, asking people from the public to come forward. Maybe someone knows something out there that can help investigators answer the questions and bring some closure to the family on that homicide case. So suffice it to say that case is still active. There are still detectives that are working on that full time and will continue to do so. This case, obviously, is one that Farmington Police, I'm sure, are going to work with all the authorities in the homicide case and try and determine what happened here and why this happened, how this happened, and see if there is any evidence that may, in fact, be available that may be helpful in the in the location of Jennifer or any questions that still exist in that case.
Well, that is something that I know a lot of our viewers are questioning on Facebook of, did Fotis Dulos issue a note? Did he leave a note behind before he committed suicide? And if so, did he give police any information? Did he confess anything, or what would he say in that note? Now, there are 2 other suspects, too. How do you think everything changes now in the legal cases and the criminal cases now that Fotis Dulos is dead?
Well, I think they continue to go forward. They will continue to be active cases. They will continue to be cases they'll be worked on, and although nothing has changed, because investigators do not have the answers to all the questions. They have not finished their investigation where they can say case closed. They still have work to do, and they're going to continue to work on it until they can answer those questions. That I'm sure of, and quite frankly, I'm hopeful that there's some information that as a result of this incident here in Farmington that will be beneficial to investigators and to help move the homicide case of Jennifer forward and hopeful to answer a lot of questions that still have not been answered as of today.
Lieutenant Vance, thank you. We hope you can stay with us as more questions come up. We just witnessed the East Farmington fire truck leave the residence of Fotis Dulos. I want to go live now to Channel 3's Courtney Zeller, who has been standing outside since all of this transpired. Courtney, if you can take us back and let us know what you've learned since first witnessing a CPR attempt.
I know, Kara. I saw it firsthand. There was a man on the ground, and they were performing CPR. But before that, we noticed a few Farmington police cars coming through here, and then state police arrived, and that's when we noticed in the back of the home, of the Dulos home, there was a man on the ground, and they were performing CPR. And now sources telling us that was Fotis Dulos, who sources also mentioned that he has passed away. We just moments ago, though, the scene is still active, but it has cleared out just a bit. We noticed a ambulance leaving, escorted by police, and I'm just trying to see if I see anything. There's I don't know if this is state police that just arrived here at Jefferson Crossing, but we have noticed a bunch leaving. There's a few more coming. Now around 11 o'clock, 11:30, we've been out here since then, and we noticed a woman arrived at the Dulos home. Maybe about a half hour later, she left, and then we noticed that's when police arrived here at the home, and then this started all unfolding. The woman came back as they were performing CPR, and we saw her run through the back, like pretty frantic. Not sure who she is, and we are expecting an update from state police fairly shortly here. So hopefully we can get a bunch of these questions we have answered. But again, sources telling us that Fotis Dulos has died. Sorry, Kara, I'm at a loss for words because I watched it, all unfold today, not too long ago. Seeing.
It's
I guess I've
traumatic,
never
for sure, to
seen.
watch that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't seen anyone perform CPR on someone, and to watch that, it's pretty intense. And there was a few fire and police crews out here, and they were taking turns
Courtney, I
performing
have to let you go.
CPR, and it was going back and forth for
a
quite
long
some
time.
time, about 10-15 minutes. So.
Courtney, we thank you so much for your reporting, and we know this has been so much to witness on TV. We want to go live as a member of the defense team is speaking.
Rich confirmed.
I don't know what Rich confirmed.
Rich confirmed that Fotis died as a result of suicide.
I can't confirm that for you.
There have been conflicting reports as to whether or not he still has a pulse and is on the way to the hospital. Can you just tell us whether or not that's what you know, anything?
As I understand it, he is being taken to Yukon Health Center, and that's really, at this point, all that we know. I don't have any confirmation of death.
Kevin, did it look like bond was going to be revoked today?
Not going to talk about that issue. Bigger things going on.
Thank you, Kevin.
It appears, as you're listening to Kevin, a member of his defense team, saying he can't confirm death, but I do want to bring you a statement from Norm Pattis, who's the lead defense attorney in this case, who seems to be confirming what we've already heard from prosecutors and official sources, that Fotis Dulos is dead. Norm Pattis issued this statement a moment ago. "This is a shocking and truly sad day," Pattis says. "My heart goes out to his children and his family. It's just a horrible day." So that again from Norm Pattis, who is the lead defense attorney in the murder case against Fotis Dulos. Just to back up, if you're just joining us, it was shortly after we began the noon broadcast that we witnessed from our Eyewitness News drone above the Fotis Dulos mansion in Farmington that someone was on the ground and the CPR was being performed. We later found out that Fotis Dulos had attempted suicide, and then later confirmation was made that Fotis Dulos was in fact dead. We don't know much more than that around the circumstances of how he committed suicide. We're going to go back live to Channel 3's Matt McFarland, who is outside Stamford Superior Court. Matt, it seems though perhaps Kevin, his defense attorney, was a little behind because Norm Pattis has already issued the statement that it's a truly sad day with his death.
Yeah. So you just read that statement from the lead defense attorney, Norm Pattis, saying it was a truly sad day, thinking of his kids. Obviously, Kevin, if he did know, he did not want to say anything, basically not confirming everything that we have been reporting throughout the afternoon. But you could see just as he came out, sort of appeared a little shaken up. Usually he will add something, he will say something, but clearly a little emotional, not wanting to say much, and then just leaving. He was here this morning to be taking part of this bond hearing, and then the news broke this afternoon that something was happening at Fotis Dulos' Farmington home, eventually him committing suicide. But again, this was expected to be a bond hearing earlier here today, an emergency hearing, questions over the security of the $6 million bond that was in place. Just last week, again, Fotis Dulos was here in court where Judge Gary White basically told him, you've had 2 strikes against you, 1 more, you're going to be in trouble. I'll raise the bond, possibly even doubling the bond. And this was in regards to him removing items from a memorial near his Farmington home that had been set up for his missing wife, Jennifer Dulos. But again, Kevin Smith, one of the counsel, he was here to take part in this bond hearing, waiting for his client Fotis Dulos to show up, and then obviously everything happening at that Farmington home where he committed suicide. Again, though, as soon as we hear more, we will bring it to you, though. For now, though, we're live with the mobile newsroom outside Stamford Superior Court. Matt McFarland, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Alrighty, thank you, Matt McFarland. If we can go back to the view from our exclusive drone video outside of the Farmington home of Fotis Dulos. This is exclusive Drone 3 video that you're looking at. And this is shot earlier today. This is the actual CPR attempt that was being made on Fotis Dulos. We now know that that is Fotis Dulos on the ground. And you are witnessing as police officers and emergency personnel were trying to revive him. This went on for about 10 minutes, according to Courtney Zeller, who was outside watching this happen. At this point, we didn't know when it first appeared that it was Fotis Dulos. We later learned that he committed suicide today, and this is exclusive Drone 3 video of officers trying to revive him. Then officers put up a tent and tarps to obscure any view, as this is now a crime scene. And as Lieutenant Vance has said, all law enforcement now will be documenting the scene and trying to preserve evidence, both for the suicide case of Fotis Dulos and the larger murder investigation. Lieutenant Vance saying that officers will be looking for any information, as this is still an active investigation. Even though the murder suspect Fotis Dulos is dead, the case of Jennifer Dulos and her presumed death is not over, and then investigators are still working full-time to solve that case. We are showing you the Drone 3 video that was just above the Fotis Dulos mansion, where Courtney Zeller has been all morning, and we witnessed an ambulance show up there. The ambulance was there for quite some time before finally leaving. We've been told that Fotis Dulos, the body of Fotis Dulos, is being taken to Yukon. As I pause here, I'm getting information from our producers that we are able now to go live to Channel 3's Eva Zamaris. As we join Eva, we're going to just recap the timeline of events. What a dramatic day this has been, starting with an emergency bond hearing and then learning that Fotis Dulos is dead, that he has committed suicide. Eva.
Good afternoon to you, Kara. What a day it has been. That's right. It changed dramatically, even within just 10 minutes or so. We're actually awaiting a press conference any minute now outside of Fotis Dulos' Jefferson Crossing home here in Farmington. Now, it just hit 8 months since Jennifer Dulos went missing from New Canaan. She was last seen alive, dropping off her 5 children at school. State police have been working tirelessly over the course of these last 8 months, trying to piece this all together. And as the investigation was unfolding, we did learn recently, just earlier this month, today actually marking 3 weeks since those major developments here in this missing persons case, that 3 people were arrested exactly 3 weeks ago. Fotis Dulos, her estranged husband, Jennifer Dulos' estranged husband, had been charged in connection to her disappearance and presumed death, as well as his former girlfriend, Michelle Triconis, and his close friend and former attorney, Kemma Winnie. They were charged with conspiracy to commit murder. And again, Kara, as you just mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, and I know that my colleague Courtney Zeller has been here on the scene as well, that Fotis Dulos was supposed to have a bond hearing today, that we knew that that was going to be happening in Stamford around noon, and shortly around that time, that's when this all started taking place. But again, we are going to be addressed here on the scene. We're going to be getting much more information about what unfolded here. Kara, I'm going to send it back to you.
And as Eva has just said, we are awaiting a news conference from police. We did get a statement just a little while ago from Norm Pattis, the lead defense attorney in this case, who has been a vehement supporter of Fotis Dulos, often saying that he was innocent and that the state has its case all wrong. Today, he has been saying his statement is, "This is a shocking and truly sad day. My heart goes out to his children and his family. It's just a horrible day." We do know that Norm Pattis is out of state tending to another criminal case. We are awaiting police to give us some more information. I know that many of you on Facebook have been asking, is there a suicide note? That is something we don't know at this point. We don't know how Fotis Dulos committed suicide. We can show you, as we saw in the exclusive Drone 3 video, police were trying to revive him just outside the garage. And this was this morning. We were witnessing this on air about 12:05, I would say. It was shortly after we began the noon news that we were in place to watch Fotis Dulos go to his bond hearing at Stamford Superior Court, when instead we witnessed a CPR attempt going on in his driveway just outside the garage of the mansion that Eva Zamaris is standing outside of in Farmington. This news is just starting to ripple through, as where Matt McFarland was at Stamford Superior Court. They were all set for a bond hearing, and then they had to bring down the cameras, and court, of course, was not going to happen on that bond hearing. We understand he was being brought in because there were some questions about the financial backing of the bond. The insurance company that was backing that bond had issues with perhaps some of the collateral that was being put up, are what we're seeing from different reports. So we're looking now at the Drone 3 video that happened shortly after the CPR attempt. We understand that attempt went on for about 10 minutes. That's about the time that Courtney Zeller said she watched it go on. And then later, the tents and the tarps have been put up to protect that as now a crime scene. We understand the body of Fotis Dulos is being brought to the Yukon Medical Center in Farmington. That was according to his other defense attorney, Kevin, who would not confirm the death, but said that that's where the body was being taken. If you're just joining us, we are awaiting information from police. We understand they're going to be having a news conference very soon, which is why we're staying on air here to bring you the very latest in this very dramatic day in the murder charges against Fotis Dulos, who was supposed to appear for a bond hearing and now we understand is dead by suicide. Just going to check in with our producers in the back here to see what we're going to go to next. We do have Lieutenant Vance back on the phone. Lieutenant, if you can shed some light on what's happening as far as police investigating that as a crime scene, and will they also be collecting evidence, if there is any, with regard to the murder case?
Yes, Kara, this is actually a criminal investigation. The suicide of any individual is treated as a criminal investigation. It gives the detectives and investigators the opportunity to answer all the questions as to why and how this occurred, i.e. that means they will scour the area where he was attempted to be revived with advanced life support, EMS response, go to where he was discovered, certainly examine that with a fine-tooth comb and see if there's any evidence there that's pertinent, and then continue on right through into the residence and search the residence to see if there's anything that would shed any light on this incident that occurred in Farmington. Certainly the big questions are, is there any evidence that investigators may find that will answer some questions into the homicide of Jennifer, which is an entirely separate case. But certainly I think we're all standing by and waiting for whatever investigators can discover to see if it has any impact on both cases, two separate individual cases that we're looking at right now.
And we know that just recently he was removing items from a memorial that you can still see from our Drone 3, that people had been bringing items for Jennifer, including sources had told us that specifically some of the items he was removing were purple items, purple ribbons, things indicating domestic violence, and he claimed that memorial taunted him. For people to understand, as his bond was revised and he was in that home, he was no longer allowed to leave for even doctor's appointments or work. It was just strictly staying in that house, and that's how it's been for the last week or so.
Yes, ma'am, that's absolutely correct. And I watched the court, the judge make that determination as to what the confinement would consist of, and he was very, very specific in his instructions to Dulos about what he could and could not do as a result of the latest, I'll say, rules that he put on him. And one of them was he could not leave the four corners of that home for any reason except for judicial appointments and I believe maybe doctor's appointments, if my memory serves me correct. But that was it. And so you couldn't go tamper with a memorial outside. You couldn't go out for a walk. He was basically under house arrest to his truest definition.
Thank you, Lieutenant Vance. We appreciate you standing by and shedding some light on what's going on from a law enforcement perspective. We do want to go back out live to Eva Zamaris, who is joining us live outside the Farmington residence where Fotis Dulos was found dead by suicide. Eva, you have been there many days, both with his arrest, with his return home. He was always smiling, saying, I love my children. His attorney saying that this whole case is silly. We need to get on with the trial. And now this.
Yeah, Kara, as I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, this has been a really long 8 months since this all started to unfold. Just to kind of reiterate, I know that many of our viewers have followed the story very closely. It was back on May 24th that Jennifer Farber Dulos did go missing from New Canaan. She was last seen alive, dropping off her five children.
Eva, I'm so sorry I have to interrupt you. We are getting breaking news. Norm Pattis is now saying that Fotis Dulos has a pulse. This is breaking news. We had it confirmed from law enforcement that Fotis Dulos was dead by suicide. But his defense attorney is just coming in now and telling Eyewitness News that Okay, Norm Pattis has just released a statement saying, I'm told that Fotis Dulos is on his way to the hospital and he has a pulse. My thoughts and prayers are with him. Now, just 10 minutes ago, Norm Pattis issued a statement saying this is a shocking and truly sad day. Pattis said, my heart goes out to his children and his family. It's just a horrible day. But now we are hearing from Norm Pattis, the defense attorney in this murder case, that Fotis Dulos has a pulse. So, Eva, I'm just going to go back out to you because now we have that information, and obviously that will adjust what we are hearing. We did witness Fotis Dulos as the law enforcement was attempting to perform CPR for at least 10 minutes. The ambulance was there for a very long time. And when the ambulance left, it actually didn't leave with sirens. It left on as it was driving out, it drove normally. So this is shocking news as we're hearing from Norm Pattis that he has a pulse. This is information. All I can do is report to you what we are hearing. This is certainly in conflict of what authorities had told us earlier, that Fotis Dulos is dead and that he had committed suicide. Eva, if we can go back out to you and we can just talk about some of the time frame. I know this is shocking news to you as I just interrupted you with that information.
Yeah, and Kara, we're going to get information here on the scene, hopefully within the next couple of minutes or so. So hopefully we can clear up everything that we've been hearing. I know that we had that confirmed from authorities, but again, we're hearing some different information now from Norm Pattis. But like I said, we're going to be briefed here on the scene, hopefully within just a couple of minutes or so. But just to recap this timeline and the investigation, I know that many people have followed this very closely. Again, it just marked 8 months since Jennifer Farber Dulos went missing. Over the course of those 8 months, state police have worked tirelessly to piece this all together, trying to figure out exactly what might have happened or led up to her disappearance. And today marked 3 weeks since I was standing at this very spot that we did get word that Fotis Dulos had been charged with murder. State police believing that he brutally attacked Jennifer Farber Dulos inside of her New Canaan home more than 8 months ago now, ultimately killing her and trying to cover it all up. We also had gotten word that 2 other people had been charged in connection to her disappearance and presumed death. His former girlfriend, Michelle Draconis, and his friend and former attorney, Kent Mawhinney. They were also charged and arrested just 3 weeks ago today. Now, again, state police say that this investigation is far from over. The biggest question in all of this still does remain, where is Jennifer Farber Dulos? We know that over the course of these 8 months, state police have been looking all over the state, following every tip and lead that they might have gotten in this investigation, trying to answer that very question. And to this day, more than 8 months later, they still don't have the answer to that. But again, this is another development in the case that, again, we're going to be following very closely here in Kara. As I've been saying, we are awaiting a press conference within the next couple of minutes or so where we should clarify all of that information.
Already, thank you so much, Eva, as you're standing outside where so many dramatic events have unfolded live on television today. If we can perhaps walk our viewers through as we wait for the police press conference. If you're just joining us, we do have exclusive Drone 3 video of what happened early this morning. Actually, it was about, not so early this morning, about 12:05 as Eyewitness News at noon was underway. And we were reporting that Fotis Dulos would have to go in for a bond hearing. We then saw through Drone 3 a CPR attempt of a man in the driveway outside of Fotis Dulos' mansion in Farmington. It was then reported that Fotis Dulos had attempted suicide, and later that Fotis Dulos was in fact dead. We are now hearing from his attorney, Norm Pattis, that after efforts to revive him, there is a pulse, and that there's apparently going to be a news conference outside of the University of Connecticut Medical Center in Farmington. We are going to be able to hear from a member of his legal team. Do we have that now? Okay, I'd like to bring in a member of Fotis Dulos' legal team with a comment.
As I understand it, he is being taken to UConn Health Center. And that's really, at this point, all that we know.
So that's the attorney Kevin there, and we had heard originally Norm Pattis had sent out concurring with prosecutors or appearing to at least comment after prosecutors and other law enforcement had confirmed he was dead, saying that it was a truly sad day. Now Norm Pattis has said he is en route to the hospital and that there is a pulse and that his thoughts and prayers are with his client, Fotis Dulos. So we understand that Channel 3's Mike Savino will be at the news conference at UConn Health Center in Farmington, and we'll be bringing that news conference to you live in just a moment. I don't know if Lieutenant Vance is still available, but I would like to go back and see if we can talk about what has transpired in the last few moments. We've been trying to be very careful about the information that's coming in and only reported as authorities tell us that it's true, which we had gotten the official word that Fotis Dulos was dead by suicide. And now we're hearing that perhaps those attempts to revive him in the driveway were somewhat successful because he has a pulse. Lieutenant Vance, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Shocking turn of events.
Yes, it certainly is. But I must say, I've seen CPR in the field in the past. I've seen advanced life support come out and bring medicine right to the scene and have been successful after a long bout of cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So certainly it's possible, and as we saw, the ambulance left the scene with police escort and is en route to the hospital. So they maybe had made a turnaround and changed what they thought they had originally, and there is a possibility. I think we need to assume that we have to wait until we get a final decision from a medical doctor.
And that's really why the body would be brought. Originally, we had said that it was confirmed that Fotis Dulos had died, but the body would be taken to the hospital because that is officially where someone would be pronounced dead.
Well, that's true. Certainly, a paramedic could do the pronouncement at the scene, and the fact that they removed Dulos from the scene to a hospital is possibly indicative that they were successful with some advanced life support techniques in the field.
I mean, we watched CPR go on for at least 10 minutes, and then the ambulance did show up. It wasn't as quickly as you would have thought, given that the officers were out there doing CPR for quite some time. But I know that every case is different, but in your experience, what have you seen as far as CPR going on that long and advanced life support services going on and outcomes from it?
I have seen positive outcomes, Kara, and quite frankly, what we have here in the state of Connecticut is remarkable as far as advanced life support. What I used to see 30 or 35 years ago was grab them and run and hope that the doctors could do something. But now with the paramedic service that we have here in the state of Connecticut, it is possible. It certainly is possible to bring someone back, so to speak, to give the physicians at the hospital something to work with, if you will, to try and revive them completely. And so I think it's important that we note that regardless, it sounds as though he was in critical condition, and we'd have to assume that that remains the case until the medical doctors see what they have and see what they can do.
I mean, I know police were being very careful with this case, and we were being very careful until it was officially until we got word from authorities that Fotis Dulos was pronounced dead. I guess that is something that could happen at the scene, where perhaps a paramedic would have thought that he had died and made that pronouncement, and then something changes.
That's a possibility. That certainly is a possibility. As possibly an EMT starts up a resuscitation and doesn't think he or she are making progress, and then paramedics get there with advanced life support and really can change the outcome. It can change what the original responders thought they had. Like I say, we're very fortunate in the state of Connecticut. We have such great advanced life support to make a difference in a lot of these cases.
Well, this is a shocking turn of events, and we are continuing to monitor every moment with it. Lieutenant Vance, thank you for standing by as we are looking live at Fotis Dulos' home in Farmington, where there's still a good amount of law enforcement on scene there, much less than there was a few hours ago, or about an hour ago. I want to go live now to Mike Savino, who is outside the UConn Medical Center in Farmington, where we are awaiting a news conference. Mike, what have you heard?
Well, so far we've been hearing what you've been hearing, obviously, that, now there's some uncertainty about, what exactly is going on. So we're waiting for officials, as you mentioned, from UConn Health Center to come down and give us some updated information. So there's a media staging right now set up near one of the entrances to the UConn Health Center. We're just waiting for them to come down. There's some police over here right now, but otherwise just kind of, everyone's sitting around waiting. There's not a lot of activity right now. There was an ambulance, obviously, that brought Fotis here earlier. So we're just kind of waiting on information at this point.
And Mike, we saw the ambulance leave Fotis Dulos' residence. It left some time long after the tents had been put up, the police had quit running around. I mean, it really seemed as though the scene had quieted down, and we watched this is video of the ambulance coming to the residence. It was there for quite some time. You're looking at this live. These are live pictures. Is that correct?
We're set up at the hospital.
Right, Mike.
So
I'm just
waiting,
asking our producers. What we're seeing right now, are we looking live right now at the residence? Okay, so sorry, we took the live bug down just now. This is earlier video of when the ambulance had come to the residence, and now it was there for some time, and then they left. And they left with a police escort. We understand they were heading to where you are, Mike Savino, at the medical center in Farmington. Are you hearing that doctors are going to be telling us about his condition?
That's what we're hoping will happen. Right now, we're still trying to find out who will be speaking at this press conference, but the early indication from UConn is that, we will be getting some indication of what's happening. We're not exactly sure yet who will be speaking at that press conference.
Alrighty, thank you, Mike. We're going to be back in touch with you. Please let us know as soon as you get word that those doctors or a police officer are going to be coming out. If you're just joining us, it's been a whirlwind of events, starting with a CPR attempt on Fotis Dulos outside of his residence. It was confirmed that he tried to commit suicide. Then it was confirmed that Fotis Dulos was dead. Now we understand from his attorney, Norm Pattis, Fotis Dulos has a pulse, and we are waiting to hear from authorities at the UConn Medical Center. I'd like to go out live to Courtney Zeller, who is still live outside the residence in Farmington, to see what actually we'll be going to Courtney in just a moment. As she has been out there and actually witnessed that CPR attempt that happened shortly after 12 o'clock today. Just to back up, it was an important day for Fotis Dulos. He was being brought back to court, to Stamford Superior Court, for a bond hearing. We understand that the insurance company who was backing the bond had some concerns about collateral. And the judge had already said to Fotis Dulos, who had spent a couple of nights in jail after the murder charge, that these are two strikes with regard to things that had happened earlier with his bond. And the third strike, I made just double that bond to $12 million, which would have made it likely very difficult for him to pursue his defense outside of prison. Now we know that Fotis Dulos attempted suicide at his home. What we don't know is how he tried to kill himself. All we know is we watched law enforcement try and revive him just outside of the garage. He was wearing jeans and a white T-shirt as they worked on him for some time, at least 10 minutes of CPR. And then ambulances arrived, and as Lieutenant Vance was telling us, he says he has seen this before on crime scenes where it appears that a suspect or even someone who isn't a suspect has been lost. And then with the advanced life-saving procedures available to paramedics and to ambulances, a turn of events like this could happen. So it's very tenuous at this point. All we know for sure is that the defense attorney, Norm Pattis, is saying that Fotis Dulos has a pulse and that his thoughts and prayers are with him. This is after Pattis had said it was a truly shocking and sad day and that his heart went out to his children. I want to go live now to Courtney Zeller, who is live outside of the Farmington residence. What have you learned in the last few moments, Courtney?
Hi, Carol. Well, you just mentioned that Norm Pattis said that Fotis Dulos has a pulse and he's going to the hospital. Okay, and let me hold that thought for 1 second, because we're just seeing state police kind of speed through here. This is Jefferson Crossing. This is the Dulos home. We did see a few leave, and now 2 more have arrived. Local police also here as well, and we did see a few of the police officers leave from Farmington. But again, you're just seeing 2 state police cruisers arrive here at the Dulos home. Okay, so Norm Pattis was saying in his statement that Fotis Dulos has a pulse and he was being taken to the hospital. We did see that ambulance leave here. It was very urgent, and there was a police car escorting that ambulance. So that's something to keep of note. But we are still waiting for police to come talk to us. We're hearing that this update is going to be fairly shortly, but we've all been waiting out here to see what new information that we get. But yeah, you know, around 11:30 noon time today, we've been out here, and because we were told that Fotis Dulos, you know, had that court appearance and that he was possibly going to be escorted to court today, to Stamford Court. And then we had our drone up, which you saw if you've been watching. Police had put up a few tents and a tarp. But before that, I saw firsthand police and fire crews taking turns giving CPR to a man who was on the ground. They had lifted up his shirt and they were giving him compressions, and they were going back and forth doing that. That takes a lot out of you if you have done CPR before, even if you've taken a class. It takes your breath away to do that, and they were switching out to perform CPR. But again, Norm Pattis mentioning that Fotis Dulos has a pulse and he has been transported by ambulance to the hospital. So any new information, of course, we will bring that to you right away. But that's the latest here in Farmington, Kara. I'll pass it back off to you.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Courtney Zeller, for your reporting, as Courtney actually witnessed the dramatic turn of events as law enforcement was trying to revive Fotis Dulos outside of his home and his driveway there. And we would like now to go live to Eva Zamaras, who is also live near the Farmington estate, with some information as we continue to wait for this police news conference. It certainly, Eva, has been a lot of confusion, as first not knowing who was even on the ground, to learning that Fotis Dulos attempted suicide, to hearing that he was dead, and to now hearing that he has a pulse. Eva?
And Kara, we're hoping that police are going to be able to clear this all up in just a couple of minutes from now. We are told, and I just heard my colleague Courtney Zeller saying it just a couple of minutes ago, that we are expecting that news conference to be in just a couple of minutes. We are hoping to get more information from police to hopefully clear this all up. From what we were told earlier today to what we're now learning from Norm Pattis, again, we are awaiting that update. Now, just to kind of walk you through the steps a little bit, we keep recapping the case as we are awaiting that press conference that's going to hopefully be happening in just a couple of minutes. It's been a months-long investigation. This stretches all the way back to May 24th, when Jennifer Farber Dulos, the mother of 5, went missing from New Canaan. State police have been working around the clock on this case following every lead and tip that came into them, hoping to answer that ultimate question, where is Jennifer? And while state police have not been able to answer that question quite yet, they do reiterate and maintain this is still very much an active and ongoing investigation. Now, it was exactly 3 weeks ago that we were standing in this very spot in Farmington outside of Fotis Dulos' Jefferson Crossing home that we did see state police show up in droves, a number of state police cruisers coming into Jefferson Crossing and parking outside of the Dulos mansion here in Farmington. And within about 10 minutes, we saw Fotis Dulos being taken away in state police custody, his attorney, Norm Pattis, trailing that state police convoy. He came out of his car and he did tell us that his client, it was his belief that his...
What we know is that Jennifer went missing sometime in
Okay, just to kind of reiterate, we did know from Norm Pattis, he did stop us and talk to us just minutes after that arrest did take place, telling us that it was his understanding, prefacing that he hadn't seen the arrest warrant yet, that his client, Fotis Dulos, had been charged with murder. He did tell us that 2 other people were also charged in connection to this case. And we later learned that those 2 other people were his former girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, someone else that we knew about from the very beginning, someone that state police had mentioned and talked about early in their investigation. Now, we also learned of a third person that had not been known to us just yet, Kent Mawhinney. He is a close friend of Fotis Dulos. He was a former attorney for Fotis Dulos, and we learned that both Kent Mawhinney and Michelle Troconis had been charged in connection to this case, both being charged with conspiracy to commit murder. So 3 weeks ago, those 3 major arrests were made. Now, Fotis Dulos, since that time, did appear back in court. We were at Stanford Superior Court just last week when a judge actually brought him in because there was concerns that he was violating the conditions of his release. Now, in order to be out on bond, he needed to actually abide by these conditions of his release, meaning that was abiding by his house arrest, wearing a GPS monitoring and tracking device, and not having any contact with those involved in this case. And he did have a hearing because there was concern from the state's perspective that he was violating those conditions of his release. And that actually stemmed from him making a stop that the state argued was not an approved stop for him to make. And that was just outside of his Jefferson Crossing home, where a memorial is set up for Jennifer Farber Dulos. That memorial still stands. There are a number of flowers, candles, a Justice for Jennifer banner as well. That's right outside of this home, and the state was arguing that he shouldn't have stopped there, that he actually did take items from that memorial that Norm Pattis, his attorney, actually said were taunting Fotis Dulos. Should he have stopped? Norm Pattis said no, but he did, and that was enough to bring him into court. That was just last week. And again, Matt McFarland, my colleague, was reporting this morning. I know that he was outside awaiting that bond hearing that was supposed to be happening around noon today. And as that was happening there and we were awaiting that hearing, that's when the scene was unfolding here in Farmington. And first responders responded here. We saw, state police, ambulances, and this is when everything started unfolding. So when we were waiting for the hearing, Kara, that's when this was happening here in Farmington. But again, we are waiting an update from police, hoping to learn more information and try to clear up all of the information that we've been hearing in the last couple of hours or so.
And Eva, stay with me for a second, because I know you have been on this story from the very beginning. We have been outside that home as things have transpired, even the day where he was brought into custody and we learned that he would be charged with murder. We can let people know that what happened today, it started with seeing a scene outside where Fotis Dulos was being revived by law enforcement. At first, we didn't even know it was him. And then a confirmation that he tried to commit suicide. Now, as of about 1:30, we understand state police are planning a news conference at the UConn Medical Center in Farmington. So we should be able to get some clarity of what happened from hearing that Fotis Dulos was dead to now hearing from Fotis Dulos' attorney that he's en route to the hospital with a pulse. Our thoughts and prayers are with him. That was the last thing we heard. But Eva, if you're still there, even what we do know for sure is that he tried to commit commit suicide. That fact has not changed, according to authorities. And that's certainly in sharp contrast to what we have seen from a very well-dressed, very smiling Fotis Dulos, often looking outside at the window and smiling at reporters. This does seem to be a grave departure from the suspect we have seen on TV up to this point.
Yeah, Kara, you're right. And after he was arrested over the summer, this is now 7-8 months ago now, we actually were outside of his Jefferson Crossing home here in Farmington when he was first fitted with an ankle monitor, that GPS tracking device. And Fotis Dulos was out for a run. He actually ran by all of our news cars. We saw as he was living his life, seemingly unfazed by this investigation. And over the course of this entire investigation, his attorney, Norm Pattis, has maintained his client's innocent. He's said from the very beginning that there is no way that his client had anything to do with Jennifer Farber Dulos's disappearance and now presumed death. And that is something that they've maintained for more than 8 months now. And I've seen Fotis Dulos in court. I've talked to Fotis Dulos, and he very much, this is quite a departure, in your words, Kara, from the suspect that we've seen over the course of these 8 months or so. I mean, we were just in court, like I said, just last week, and he didn't say anything after court, but his previous court appearances, he did. He just reiterated how much he missed and loved his children and was very committed to gaining custody of them once again.
That's what we heard time after time, both from Fotis Dulos and from his attorney. I just want my children. I want to take care of my children. The last thing, when you were standing outside, was not that long ago with Norm Pattis confirming that he would be charged with murder. He later said, let's get on with this silly case and let's get a trial as soon as possible, indicating he didn't think the state had a very strong case. What we're not sure about is what has transpired in the last 48 hours or so, what led to this bond hearing that was not expected today. And now the insurance company apparently questioning the collateral that was put up for the bond. And was there a fear on the part of Fotis Dulos of going back to prison? We do understand that Fotis Dulos was en route to the UConn Medical Center, where we imagine doctors will do everything they can, and that he'll be admitted as any other patient who would have tried to commit suicide. And it appears that these efforts to revive him have led to something. At least we're hearing from his attorney that Fotis Dulos now has a pulse. Eva?
I'm sorry, Kara, I just stepped out for just a couple of seconds or so just to listen to exactly what you're saying. Yes, we are awaiting an update to see what transpired here. Kara, as you've said, we do have it confirmed from authorities that Fotis Dulos did attempt suicide here today. We are awaiting on his status. We are hoping to learn more from authorities as the day does progress. Like I said, we are waiting an update here as well. But a lot's changed, as you mentioned, just in the last 48 hours or so. We are wanting to learn more from authorities what that was. I mean, it was just in court last week when we were at Stanford Superior Court that his attorney, Norm Pattis, told us that Fotis Dulos would actually be waiving his right to a probable cause hearing, and that's exactly what unfolded in court last week.
Eva, I just want to break in for one moment. We are able to confirm, we're hearing from multiple sources, that Fotis Dulos attempted suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning. That certainly would make sense with what we're seeing, as you're seeing even now the live aerial view of Fotis Dulos' mansion in Farmington there on Jefferson Crossing. What we witnessed shortly after noon was him lying in the driveway and emergency personnel trying to revive him for an extended period of time in exactly the area where you see those blue tents. And that would be, as we can see from the drone, the Channel 3 drone, that this is just outside the garage. So we are now hearing from multiple sources that they confirm Fotis Dulos attempted to kill himself via carbon monoxide poisoning. We, at this point, don't know how critical his condition is. We are only hearing from his defense attorney after reports that he was confirmed dead. We are now hearing from his defense attorney that he has a pulse, and we are awaiting a news conference with state police from the UConn Medical Center. But Eva, if you can describe the scene there and where that, where the garage is and where he was found, just it would certainly, now that we're hearing that the attempt was via carbon monoxide poisoning, it would make sense that that is exactly where the garage is.
Well, Kara, where his house is here in Jefferson Crossing is actually just 2 in from the very end of this private drive. I'm actually going to step out of the way and have my photographer Maddox kind of zoom. You can see that there's a white house that's here and there's a brick house that's directly next to it. And that is Fotis Dulos' Jefferson Crossing Farmington home. You can see the line of state police that are here on the street. Just to explain where the garage is, you could see kind of the closest part to us where the house is. The garage bay is just beyond that. My coworker Courtney Zeller was the one who was here on the scene witnessing this, seeing where this all unfolded. But as you can see in our live pictures from the scene right now, it's not far from street view where the house is, where the garage is, and where state police are here on the scene parked. Just to kind of give you all an update on what we're seeing right now, we are seeing state police here. We hear the state police helicopter actually flying overhead. It's been flying overhead over the course of the time that we've been here. We've been hearing it, and we see it almost directly above the Dulos mansion here in Farmington. And Drone 3 has been providing that look above the house as you see state police continuing their investigation here. But again, just to kind of paint the scene, this is a private drive, Jefferson Crossing here in Farmington, and you can actually see that the Dulos mansion is the brick house just 2 houses in from where we're standing right now. The bay not far, the garage bay not far from where we are right now, where state police is parked. But again, state police remain here on the scene. We can actually see the state police helicopter flying almost directly over the Dulos mansion here in Farmington. I believe that we're panning to those live pictures. They've been hovering over the scene for quite some time now. We're actually taking some live pictures. I know that we're trying to get a viewpoint. We can actually see it right now. That's the state police helicopter that's been flying here overhead on the scene. As again, state police continue their investigation here. They've been here for quite some time since this all started unfolding here right outside of the Jefferson Crossing home. And again, we see a number of state authorities here. We know that local police were here as well. And we're keeping a very close eye on the scene and monitoring it for any changes. But again, the scene has changed dramatically since we came on the air as breaking that something was happening here. The scene has quieted down quite a bit, but again, the investigation does continue here, Kara.
Alrighty, thank you, Eva. We will check back in with you. And I'm joined now by Channel 3 Eyewitness News anchor Dennis House, as we have just reported to our viewers that multiple sources have told us that Fotis Dulos has tried to commit suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning, which would make sense as we witnessed him being revived outside the garage.
And we're told this happened with a vehicle in his garage, which sadly is a way that some people do commit suicide. The garage would fill up, or the car would fill up, depending on what kind of system was used there. But this all began this morning. We received a tip that Fotis Dulos was going to be in court, brought back to court by police because of some sort of a technicality on the bond.
Yes, we're hearing that it was to do with the financial backing, and as we know that with a $6 million bond, he got a certain amount of cash. The rest would be with insurance companies and real estate, and if the collateral wasn't really there, that could cause a big issue for him.
Indeed, indeed. And so he would have had to go back to court and perhaps back to prison if this whole bond thing fell apart. And Courtney Zeller reported that there was a woman running down the driveway, correct? And apparently that woman is on the bond. She's one of the people involved in the bond.
Okay, so we weren't sure who that woman was, but we did witness a woman had gone inside the house and then seemed to be running frantically. Speaking of Courtney Zeller, we would like to go out live to Courtney Zeller right now. And Courtney, for those who are just joining us, can you describe, I guess that's how we must have found out about Fotis Dulos being unconscious or having a suicide attempt, was from that woman who entered the home that you saw.
Yeah, we were originally out here because of that court date that that we told you about his regarding his bond, and so we saw a woman here, and we figured if he has to be in court, he probably should have left by now because it was around like 11 o'clock or so. And that court date's in Stanford, and that isn't close at all to Farmington. I mean, from Rocky Hill, it'll take us like well over an hour with no traffic. So then we had our drone up. I'm just going to have you pan over here because you can see this is still a very active scene. And our drone's up, and then all of a sudden, I mean, it was pretty shocking, Kara and Dennis, seeing a man just laying on the driveway when we thought he was going to court. So right before that, we noticed a bunch of police cars coming through, speeding on by. going to the back of the home. And then they started performing CPR on Fotis Dulos, but he was wearing jeans and he had a white t-shirt on, and they lifted up his t-shirt. And between fire crews and police officers, they were going back and forth performing that CPR. I mean, it went on for 10 minutes because I made sure to time it, because in these situations, I'm sure, you know, I mean, I've called an ambulance for a loved one before. I'm sure you have too. And it feels like it takes forever for them to get there. But they were really just behind those officers when the 2 ambulances arrived. And they continued those compressions. And then we did notice them put up those 2 blue tents, and then they had a yellow tarp. And, you know, it could very well be to cover our drone as well. I mean, there's a few drones that were eventually out here at one point. So they probably wanted to shy away from that footage. But yeah, so still a very active scene out here, but I saw it all unfold. You know, it's pretty shocking to see them performing those compressions, and then an ambulance, a few ambulances came, and then we noticed one leaving by police escort. And like Eva was saying, we are expecting an update here fairly shortly from state police. So we hope to get some more of our questions answered, and we of course will bring that to you live on the air. Kara, Dennis.
Thank you, Courtney.
Courtney, thank you so much. What a turn of events today, though. Of course, I was watching as you announced that Fotis Dulos was dead. Several sources had told us this, and then shortly thereafter we got a tip and then confirmation that he was in fact alive with a faint pulse.
With a faint pulse. And just to, people are wondering, how could this happen? Lieutenant Vance did say he has seen this before, that he's watched people be pronounced dead by a paramedic, and then extensive care is given. We know that we watched him get CPR for a long time, at least 10 minutes. We watched an ambulance come. So according to Lieutenant Vance, he has seen this happen on other crime scenes where they have been able to revive a person enough to bring them back. What we're hearing right now is that he has a pulse. We don't know if it's a strong pulse. We don't know if he's conscious, but his attorney, Norm Pattis, went from saying this is a truly shocking and sad day to my thoughts and prayers are with him. He has a pulse.
And when doctors talk about recovery, they always talk about that time that they were out, because if it's only a couple minutes, if it's an extended period of time, of course, it can lead to brain damage and other things like that. I know that you and I had an experience once where we came across someone who had a heart attack, and she was out cold, and you administered CPR. She came back to life, and she was talking, and you know, she went on to live a healthy life. Some people, that's what CPR is for, and others just it's too late.
Well, and the important thing about the CPR, they always say, is it's time is brain and time is heart also. So depending on what the situation is, by just keeping the blood flowing until you can get to a hospital or emergency services can be of a great help and of great importance. It has been a remarkable turn of events as we now understand that the woman who was walking into the Fotis Dulos home about noon, turns out that she was related to that bond hearing, and they wondered why he hadn't left yet. And now what we don't know is how long had he been there, how long had he been laying in the garage, if in fact that's what happened with, we're hearing he tried to commit suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah, we don't know the woman's name. We know that she's a friend of Fotis Dulos, and that her name apparently is in some of the bond paperwork. Okay. She's an indemnitor. And so she apparently must have found him and then called the authorities, they're saying, correct?
Right, and the only reason
the authorities were going there anyway.
The only reason why our reporters were outside that home was to watch him leave for the bond hearing. And then we started seeing, via the exclusive video on the Channel 3 drone, that someone was being given CPR in the driveway. So they obviously had found Fotis Dulos in the garage there, and apparently, all we saw was a man who they were trying to revive there in the driveway, and shortly thereafter they started to put out tents to obscure the view from the drones that were in the air.
Good enough. We're going to join Channel 3's Mike Savino. He's right now outside the Yukon Health Center in Farmington, where Fotis Dulos is there right now. And Mike, what have you learned?
Well, we're still waiting to hear from the health center. I know earlier we had reported that we were waiting on a press conference, but just a few minutes ago, we had somebody actually come down from the health center telling us that they don't actually have any plans to come talk to us right now. So we're still waiting on confirmation from the health center about their role here. We haven't heard anything from them about whether or not Fotis has come here, whether he's already here or whether they're waiting for him. So we're also waiting to see. They were trying to get police here to maybe give us an update on what's going on, since there is several media outlets already here. They are trying to see if they can get us some information, but telling us right now that they're really waiting on Farmington police or state police to give them their cue, that this is their investigation to sort of give out information. So as of right now, we aren't really getting much here from UConn Health Center.
Looking at the video from the mansion on Jefferson Crossing, there you see the ambulance leaving right now with a state police
This is earlier
escort.
video when the ambulance had left, with presumably with Fotis' body inside en route.
Being followed by Farmington police, and now they are, of course, that entourage is now at the UConn Health Center. And Mike, do we have any idea as to when this news conference is going to take place?
No, again, they're waiting on Farmington police to really take the lead here. They're, obviously inside working on whoever has been taken here so far. But more importantly, they're waiting on Farmington police and state police to sort of give an indication on what information they want to be released. So they're not going to be taking the lead in terms of coming out here, talking about who's here, what their status is. They're really leaving it up to the investigators to control the information. So, with that, we're also waiting on, when a press conference could be. This employee who came down a few minutes ago said that there's nothing in their plans to do anything anytime soon. So, it's not really clear when we might hear anything from the health center.
Farmington for us today. All right, we'll check in with you a little bit later on. Thank you.
Channel 3's Eva Zamaris is outside the Fotis Dulos home in Farmington. She's standing by the memorial. And Eva, this memorial is something that was a big factor in the case, because this is the very memorial that he was upset with and said was taunting him. And he removed things from it, and that led to a revision in his bond.
Yeah, Kara, you're right. We were just at Stanford Superior Court just last week talking about this very memorial. I'm actually going to have my photographer Maddox pan over here so you can see exactly the memorial that we're talking about. You can see that it's quite beautiful. There are a number of bouquets here. There are candles here as well. If you look all the way down, we see a canister with a candle saying, "We miss you." We see some Diet Coke bottles within it. I was actually wondering what the significance of that was when I was looking at the memorial this morning. But this is actually the memorial that the state was accusing Fotis Dulos with tampering with, and that was actually enough to bring him in and talk about it in front of a judge in Stanford Superior Court just last week. So after Fotis Dulos was released on bond, he was put on house arrest. He was fitted with a GPS monitoring device, and there were a number of conditions for his release. So how it works and how it's been explained to us is that when Fotis Dulos was placed on house arrest, there are several approved stops that he can make, whether it be to work, to his attorney's office, to the doctor, to church, if that's approved. And you have to get these stops approved in order to leave your house and for that to be okay. Fotis Dulos, from our understanding, was coming back and actually made a stop right outside of his Jefferson Crossing home here in Farmington to this very memorial. And that's when the state argued that Fotis Dulos was seen getting out of his car, coming over here and taking items from this memorial that has been set up for Jennifer Farber Dulos. And the state argued that this was in violation of his bond and the conditions of his release, saying that this was not an approved stop. And actually, the judge really came after Fotis Dulos last week, saying, quote, this was a direct quote from court last week, that what he did was stupid, that he should not have been able to do this and leave. And it was actually enough for the state to come after him, saying that this was in violation of the conditions of his release, that he should have not been coming over here. And when we questioned Norm Pattis, his attorney, after court last week, saying what were those items that Fotis Dulos actually took, Norm Pattis could not answer that question. But he did say several times that these items were taunting him, that this memorial that's in place here is not for Jennifer Farber Dulos, but instead to taunt Fotis. And every time that he is allowed to come in and out of his Jefferson Crossing home, he passes by this memorial and it's taunting him. But many have fired back, especially on social media, saying that this memorial is for Jennifer and to Jennifer. And actually, if we pan just behind me, you could see tied on the tree here, there's actually a Justice for a Jennifer ribbon that's here, again, not far from his home here on Jefferson Crossing. And again, I just want to show the memorial one more time to our viewers here as well. You can see that there are a number of bouquets. Many of them actually look quite new, that this is a growing memorial, that people have stopped here to drop off items. We're seeing candles as well. One gentleman, when we were here earlier this morning, because again, we were here hearing that Fotis Dulos was going to be having a bond hearing today around noon. We were here, Kara, as you mentioned, before he would leave for that bond hearing, and a gentleman actually stopped by and he told me that he was from Bolton and he came over here just to look at the memorial, pay his respects before taking off and leaving. But again, it was this memorial that was subject to that topic in court just last week, and it was because of those actions that the judge actually ordered that he be put on strict house arrest, and he actually took work off the table as an approved stop for Fotis Dulos to make.
Thank you, Eva. And in fact, when that happened, I know that Norm Pattis had argued that that would be a great financial hardship, that Fotis Dulos needed to at least even selling one home would change his financial picture greatly. So I know that's something that police will be looking into, what led up to the suicide attempt. If you are just joining us, we want to recap with you just after Eyewitness News at noon started. It was about 12:05 where the drone video, we were live on the air. We were watching, waiting for Fotis Dulos to leave his home to go for this bond hearing at Sanford Superior Court. And instead what we saw was police trying to revive Fotis Dulos just outside the garage in the driveway.
Yeah, we're being told that when they showed up, of course, he was in this garage where he attempted to commit suicide using carbon monoxide poisoning from the car.
I don't know if we have that video available to us, but it is exclusive Drone 3 video of what happened earlier today when police first arrived, and there was some sort of report with a woman who had entered, and then assumedly you realized that he was not en route to the bond hearing, and she had found him, and then authorities were alerted. After that, there came confirmation that he committed suicide, and later confirmation that he was dead. At this point, we are hearing from his defense attorney, Norm Pattis, that there is some sort of a faint pulse, so that in fact the information that he was dead may not have been accurate at all.
And we heard that from Pattis's colleague Kevin Smith earlier in Stamford, outside Stamford Superior Court. This, we are told, is now a live picture of the scene, and there you see the Fotis Dulos mansion at Jefferson Crossing. This is the back of the mansion, correct, where you pull around.
And just outside the garage bay, and just under those tents, Dennis, was where we witnessed the CPR happening.
And not sure if what kind of car that is to the left, if that's the car that they're looking at that he was using. I know he's got a black Chevy Suburban. We don't see that there. And you can see investigators going through. They put up those tents, and this is basically to shield the media from seeing what's going on, essentially.
Right. In the earlier video from our drone, it was a very clear view of the CPR that was happening to revive Fotis Dulos. I want to bring in Lieutenant Paul Vance, who has been with us all morning long, as he joins us on the phone. And I understand you can see what we're seeing, Lieutenant Vance. So where do we go from here? Lieutenant Vance, can you hear us? Okay, so we have just lost Lieutenant Vance, but earlier he was saying, and this bears repeating for our viewers who are joining us now, that the case is not over, despite, even when it was assumed that he was dead. He said the murder case would not be over. The investigators are still working full-time to gather evidence in the murder of Jennifer Farber Dulos. We also have some questions about what about the other two people who are charged as co-conspirators in this case. We have not heard any word yet about Michelle Troconis and about Kent Mawhinney. Michelle Troconis is free on bond, but Kent Mawhinney is in custody. And the status of their cases, or have they heard this news?
Well, yeah, I mean, presumably they heard the news because it has certainly spread all across Connecticut. Whether they can react to it legally, I don't know, because of the gag order in the case, whether they're allowed to say anything about it. That's a question that we'll have to ask one of our legal experts.
So just to give people an instance of what's happened since the murder charge, we know that there were behind-the-scenes negotiations going on for some time. Norm Pattis had said they were working to put things in place should he ever be charged with murder. Then it was a much higher bond, and he managed to, after spending a couple of nights in prison, to scrape together the money to make that bond go in place. And now we understand he was being brought back, that there was the fear that this bond could be revoked and that he would have to spend his time in prison. We don't know if that's a motive, but certainly that was what was transpiring before the suicide attempt.
Yeah, we're told that he was going to apparently go to this bond hearing by himself. He was going to drive in his own vehicle, correct? And then we're hearing later that the police were sent over. So whether they were sent over because they had been called that he was unconscious or they were going to get him to bring him to the court, we'll have to wait and see on that as well.
So a stunning turn of events outside the Fotis Dulos mansion in Farmington. We have not yet heard any new statement from the Jennifer Farber Dulos family. They had issued a statement the day of the charges. We have not heard anything yet. The most recent comment really has come from Norm Pattis, who, after saying "my heart goes out to his children and family," now says that he was en route to the hospital and that there was a pulse and that his thoughts and prayers are with him. We understand that what would happen behind the scenes at the UConn Medical Center is they would be doing regular testing, perhaps a CT scan, anything they can to find out his situation and what might help him.
Because he was out for so long, we know those compressions went on for at least 10 minutes, according to Courtney Zeller, who was reporting on that. We are now joined on the Eyewitness Newsline by Lieutenant Paul Vance, retired from State Police, who now works as a police consultant for us. Lieutenant Vance, good to see you back here with us.
Hi, good to be with you.
Thanks for joining us.
And I know you've been with us throughout the morning, and one of the things you wanted to stress is that from a criminal perspective, this case is not over. Even when we thought he was truly dead at that point, you said it wouldn't have changed things for the case.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, it's still an open, active criminal investigation, even though there have been arrests made, which is important. But depending on the outcome of Dulos, it'll not impact the other two suspects that have been accused in this case. So detectives are still actively working this case. It's important to note that they still have questions that are not answered, and they're still going to diligently pursue every aspect or every lead that they may uncover as this case continues. And certainly looking at the case here in Farmington, it may, who knows, it may in fact produce some information that may be helpful to the homicide investigation. So they're two separate entities, but certainly they're going to diligently scrutinize every square inch of that scene in Farmington to see if it produces any leads or any information whatsoever.
Lieutenant Vance, I need to ask you, when police show up at a scene like this, where the scenario we're being told is that Fotis Dulos was out cold, apparently tried to commit suicide using carbon monoxide from a vehicle, what do officers do when they arrive in a scene like that?
Well, hats off to Farmington. They did a spectacular job, Farmington police, when they responded, because it appears from the information that we're able to uncover so far that they were able to bring him out to fresh air, bring him out into the driveway, the back of the residence there, and initiate CPR. And as you've been reporting, it's important that you get that started as quickly as possible, checking for a pulse, respiration, and then beginning compressions and mouth-to-mouth breathing as required. It appears as the quicker you get that done, the more chance of survival a person has. And certainly you saw EMS respond, the fire service and whatnot, all coming and getting involved in the emergency care, of the patient at that scene. So certainly hats off to them. They did a spectacular job in performing those emergency rescues.
Lieutenant Vance, there's some concern as people are wondering, how do you get this information? How could this information change? He's dead, he's not dead. But I want to bring back what our earlier conversation was, that you said you have actually seen this on scenes before, where a paramedic would perhaps even pronounce someone dead, and then that can change because of the life-saving techniques that they have. So not even necessarily that everything was wrong, that he perhaps, when sources confirmed to us he was dead, that might have been their thinking at that time, and things can shift.
Well, certainly. I mean, the care begun by EMTs or first responders, and certainly when advanced life support gets there and they have the sophisticated medical equipment that they're able to utilize in the field, and the medications and the IVs and what have you. Sometimes they're able to turn a situation and make it better, if you will. So certainly, at some point in time, someone might have walked away and said that doesn't look good, and someone might have interpreted that as being that he's deceased, but not necessarily the case, because I know emergency care is continued if there's any hope whatsoever of survival of that person. It does not stop until a medical doctor causes it to stop.
Lieutenant, have you seen this before, where a suspect who is accused of a murder and facing some pretty credible evidence committed suicide?
I got to be honest with you. In Connecticut, no. Personally, I have not. But as you well know, across the country, there have been some high-profile cases that
Sure.
have been out there where this has occurred. Suicides have been attempted and been successful.
How does this even change things from a criminal perspective in the case? If he lives, we now know that he tried to commit suicide. Does that mean he'll have to likely go on suicide watch in prison?
That'll be, again, up to the authorities, to the judge in Superior Court. And, I'm sure that there'll be conversations about that if that comes to fruition, if that, in fact, is the case. Wish harm on anybody at all for any reason, but, certainly want to make sure that they protect him, if at all possible, from doing this again.
And we were talking earlier that though he was on strict home confinement, had a GPS monitor, Lieutenant Vance, you said that only does location. People are so used to now we're wearing Apple Watches and it's testing your pulse, and it even knows sometimes if your blood sugar is dropping. In this case, the GPS monitor would not have alerted authorities that something like that was going on, and he wouldn't have been monitored for suicide. That was not something that was on the radar for the authorities.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, that's absolutely correct. And that GPS monitor is simplified as a tracking device to ensure that the suspect or that the accused stays within the confines of what the order was that the court thrust upon him.
And while we talk to you, Lieutenant, we are looking at live pictures from Drone 3 of the mansion in Farmington on Jefferson Crossing, where Fotis Dulos lived, and actually Jennifer Dulos lived before that, before she moved out. Michelle Troconis moved in, then Michelle Troconis moved out after she was arrested. And this is actually the back of the mansion. Appears to be at least a 3-car garage, but if the drone can pan out just a little bit, you can sort of see the whole vantage point of the property. And the video that we showed earlier of the police cruisers and the ambulance pulling in, well, that would be in the front of the house. And we can see that right there. You see the driveway in the front, and there are still appears to be a police car there, actually several. And so this is where Fotis Dulos was living, and this is where he tried to commit suicide shortly, just around midday today.
Lieutenant Vance, how does this affect what will be happening now from your perspective with the other cases? There are 2 co-conspirators charged in this case.
Well, that case, simply stated, will go forward. We'll continue. The investigation is open, active, and I know that state police detectives are working with fellow law enforcement to try and answer the questions that are still unanswered at this time. And, searching for any leads, any information. But certainly with this case now, this is a separate, and it is a criminal investigation. And the hope here is that maybe there's something that will surface during this investigation that will help with the homicide investigation. And only time will tell once investigators are able to get underway and do a thorough, complete job here in the scene in Farmington.
All right, thank you, Lieutenant Paul Vance. Thank you for being with us today, and I know you'll stay close as new information develops. Thank you for being with us.
And also on the Farmington property for Eyewitness News Today is Channel 3's Eva Zamaris, who's been there since this morning. And Eva, I know that what kind of activity have you seen since the police left?
Well, we're still seeing police here on the scene. Where we're standing right now is right at the very tippy top of Jefferson Crossing. Actually, you could see that this is the memorial that's in place here for Jennifer Farber Dulos. If we pan a little bit over, from our vantage point, it's a little tough to see right now. I know that we've got Drone 3 in the air. They might be able to provide a better perspective. But you can see 2 Farmington police officers right at the top of Jefferson Crossing. And then there's a long line of state police that's actually just beyond these trees and this brush, and they're all parked across the street from Fotis Dulos's Jefferson Crossing mansion here in Farmington. State police have been here for quite some time now. As I mentioned in my last live report here, the scene has changed dramatically since we first came on the air, when there was much more activity here at the home. And now that investigation is underway here, we can see, at least from where I'm standing right now, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 state police cars and several local authorities here as well. Again, just piecing this all together and really investigating what happened here earlier today around noontime.
I know you're standing there in front of the memorial, and sources had told us, I even spoke to someone who had witnessed when he was removing those items. He seemed to be particularly upset about the purple items, and as the memorial behind you, there's a lot of purple because people are showing support and that this is a case of domestic violence in their view, which is why all the purple is showing up. But that is the very memorial behind you that he said taunted him, and apparently he was removing some of the purple ribbons and purple items from that memorial.
Yeah, Kara, as I said, Fotis Dulos was in Stamford Superior Court just last week for a couple of different things, and we broke it down last week for you. The first being that he actually waived his right to a probable cause hearing. And the reason behind that, when we asked his attorney, Norm Pattis, about that, was to actually speed this process along. That he said if a judge had already signed off on a warrant, there's no need to go through this entire process for the probable cause hearing. And he said that he was hoping that this would get them to trial much more quickly, that they were hoping that this trial could actually be taking place in September. Now, the other thing that was talked about during that court appearance just last week was the conditions of his release. Now, as we've been talking about, and we've been mentioning here on our air, that when he did post bond, when he was released, there are conditions to your release, those conditions that you have to abide by in order to be out on bond, one of which being house arrest, that he's wearing the GPS monitoring device, that he's not allowed to have contact with people involved here in this case. And we heard Lieutenant Paul Vance talk about this, that house arrest is the confines of your home. And there are approved stops that he's allowed to make. There are approved places he's allowed to go. That being, at one point, work, doctor's, lawyer's office, church, if approved as well, and those stops have to be approved. And Kara, as you mentioned, the state came after Fotis Dulos because he was caught on camera actually stopping here at Jefferson Crossing, coming out to this very memorial that you could see behind me right now, that's just right at the end of the drive, and actually removing items. And Norm Pattis said that these items taunted his client. He said that even though this is a memorial to Jennifer, it taunted his client. It was upsetting to his client. And you can see, Kara, as you mentioned, there is a lot of purple here. Tied to a tree is a purple ribbon that reads "Justice for Jennifer." There are several bouquets that are placed along a rock. You can see that there are 5 purple candles here as well. There's another candle. There's 2 candles on the ground as well. And over the course of these last couple of months, when we've kind of been keeping an eye on this memorial has actually grown from just 1, maybe 2 bouquets to what you're seeing right now. And as I mentioned earlier, we've been here just outside the property for quite some time now. We actually saw a man pull up, slow down, stop, and pull over, and he came to this very memorial to pay his respect to Jennifer, that he wanted to come here and just have a moment of silence, a moment for Jennifer. But again, this is that very memorial that came into question last week. And if this was enough of, if the state had enough of an argument that this actually was in violation of the conditions of his release, and a judge, because of this, actually took work off of those approved stops that Fotis Dulos is allowed to make while on house arrest, that any business that he has to do has to be done inside his Jefferson Crossing home. And Kara, I heard you talk about it earlier, that Norm Pattis even said that one sale of one of these homes that he built with his company, the 4 Group, the direct quote that Norm Pattis used just last week is that one sale could actually right this ship. We were aware that Fotis Dulos was having some financial troubles as well, and that one sale of one of these mansions could actually right this ship. That's Norm Pattis's direct quote from last week. And again, the judge took work off the approved list for his release, all of the work needing to be done inside of his Jefferson Crossing home, and anything else that might have needed personal attention would be needed to be done by someone else.
Eva, you bring up a good point. In fact, when we were going through the arrest warrants, they even put out the pie of, they were using finances even as a motive. Prosecutors have put out that he was overextended by millions of dollars on many credit lines. So we don't know, but we do know that something changed and he was no longer allowed to leave that home, no longer allowed to create any money. And now this, that perhaps there was a problem with the backing of the bond and that he was supposed to appear in court tomorrow. All of that certainly, I'm sure police are going to be looking at as perhaps a motive for this attempted suicide by carbon monoxide. Thank you so much for being with us, Eva. I'm sure we're going to check in with you again. We have just learned that the state police are planning on holding a news conference in about 12 minutes from now, around 2:30, they say.
Yes, we're going to be getting an update, obviously, on what happened at the Dulos mansion, what's happening right now at the UConn Health Center. If you're just joining us, of course, it's been kind of a chaotic morning because initially it was just a routine or somewhat routine bond hearing. Then it became an emergency bond hearing. We're told that police might be picking up Fotis Dulos. And then it was reported that, you reported live on air, he was getting CPR.
We watched it happen as Drone 3 had exclusive video as we were just monitoring the home to see if he might be leaving. And all of a sudden, as we're looking at our Drone 3 video, we watched as personnel attempted to revive him. Now, this is what happened after. This is after they put in the tents. But there was earlier video where our viewers who were joining us, and I don't know if we can bring that up, they were actually reviving Fotis Dulos at that time, and we had clear view of them performing CPR on him.
For about 10 minutes or so, and then it was reported, multiple sources told Eyewitness News and other media agencies that he was dead. And so we reported that Fotis Dulos was dead. A short time later, we heard some tips and later confirmed by his attorney, Norm Pattis, that indeed he was alive, but with a faint pulse. One of our reporters who was on the scene all day and witnessed much of this is Channel 3's Courtney Zeller, and she joins us now live from the Dulos property, or near the Dulos property. And Courtney, I want to ask you, because earlier today you talked about this woman who showed up at the home. We've since learned, we don't have her name yet, but we've since learned that she was part of the bond package and that she's listed on some of the bond paperwork. Tell us what you witnessed when she came there.
Yeah, we were here just
Well, yeah, you know, my colleague Eva Zamaris was actually here, and we came to basically relieve her, and she was filling me in, saying that there was this woman who showed up at the home, you know, shortly around like 11 o'clock or so this morning. And we originally were here because of this bond hearing, and we were told by sources that Fotis Dulos was going to be escorted to this bond hearing. Someone was going to pick him up, whether that was going to be state police or one of his attorneys. We didn't know, but we were told that he was going to be taken. And so, you know, it's 11 o'clock, and he needed to be in Stanford. And it does take a while to get to Stanford from Farmington, definitely over an hour. So, yeah, this woman was here. She was kind of walking around, I guess, the front of the house, and then she left. And that's what Eva Zamaris told me that she had seen with her own eyes. This woman left, and then a short time after that, that's when we saw local police show up, and then state police showed up, and we're looking at our drone footage, and all of a sudden we see this man laying on the pavement in the back of his home near the garage, and police and then fire crews showed up as well, and they're taking turns doing CPR, and apparently they were doing CPR on Fotis Dulos for about, I mean, it was about 10 minutes or if not longer. And then that's when ambulances showed up. We saw an ambulance leave by police escort. And during that time, that woman showed up again. And we saw her on our footage. She was running behind the back of the house, I'm assuming, to check on Mr. Dulos. But you had mentioned a little while ago, Dennis, that this press conference is starting in, what, about 10 minutes or so, 12 minutes from now. So we're hoping to get a little more information. But sources also mentioned, if you haven't heard this, that he was trying to commit suicide by carbon monoxide. And they pulled him out, Lieutenant Vance was saying, to get some fresh air, and then they started those compressions. Dennis, Kara.
And, you know, Courtney, just to repeat, you said they went on for about 10 minutes or so, correct, the compressions?
Yeah. Yeah, about 10 minutes. And I made sure to time it because in these kinds of situations, it seems like it takes forever. It seems like it takes forever for an ambulance to get here. It seems like it takes forever, you know, for fire crews and to police to show up. But once they started those compressions, it was 10 minutes, and then the ambulance arrived on scene. There was actually two. I saw a Yukon ambulance and then another local ambulance as well.
The video is pretty dramatic. I'm hoping we can show that to you of him actually when they first arrived at the scene.
As of right now, a lot of people witnessed that video on air, but we're not going to be showing it again for the time being. But this is what happened. It was one of those things that our drone was just over the house, and we were looking for Fotis Dulos to come out and go to court like he has done many times before. What you're seeing there is exactly where the CPR was being administered. And as we heard from Lieutenant Vance, it would be protocol to pull someone out of the garage and into fresh air, because that would be something that would be necessary. As we now have heard from multiple sources, he attempted suicide via carbon monoxide by running the car in the garage.
And Lieutenant Vance was saying he didn't really know of any cases in Connecticut where this has happened, but across the nation there have been some high-profile cases in which someone who was accused of killing someone committed suicide as this case progressed. I know in Boston, I'm going to say maybe 25 years ago, Charles Stewart was accused of killing his wife. And as the evidence really zeroed in on him, he committed suicide. I believe he jumped off a bridge, the Mystic River Bridge in Boston, as I recall. So these things do happen with these suspects who are, as the case progresses and the evidence seems to mount. We don't know, of course, his motives behind this, but we know that today was not going to be a good day for him, because he could have had his bond revoked and be sent back to prison.
The judge had warned him sternly at the last hearing, this is strike two. If I see you in here again with any violations, then I might make this a $12 million bond, which would be, of course, much more difficult to get out. Or if the financial backers had questions. This is video of when the ambulance arrived at Fotis Dulos' home earlier today. And we are expecting the news conference at, it's 2:25 now. We understand state police are going to be having a news conference around 2:30.
Yes, this is Jefferson Crossing. It's a well-to-do neighborhood near the Avon line. A lot of large mansions that are there, and Fotis Dulos, of course, that was his business. He built these large mansions.
And was no longer allowed to work. That was a condition of the last bond hearing. And certainly the financial difficulties were something that defense attorney Pattis had talked about and said that he would need to work to right his ship, and he was no longer allowed to do that as of the last week or so.
And the bond story that was developing today was somewhat complicated because it involved a mortgage in the bank and things like that. So,
well, often if you have to put up, in the $6 million bond, we know he needed about $430,000, and about $130,000 came from a family friend in cash. The rest would have to be collateral. And he's already being sued over his many properties. What cash is actually available? So that would have been something that the bail bonds company would have had to look at and see, what do you actually own that we get if something goes wrong? And we understand that was a very complicated way of all the real estate that had to be put together for that transaction.
If you are just joining us, we are preempting regular programming today to bring you some breaking news about Fotis Dulos. All of this blew up, you might want to say, during Eyewitness News at noon today, and that's after it was learned that Fotis Dulos had tried to commit suicide.
We are awaiting a news conference from the Farmington Police Department within the next 10 minutes or so, as these dramatic turn of events have happened, from learning that Fotis Dulos attempted suicide to having reports that he had died, to now having reports from his defense attorney that they had a pulse for Fotis Dulos, and he is undergoing some level of treatment at a nearby hospital. He was taken to the Yukon Medical Center. We don't know if that's where he's ultimately going to stay.
And I know you brought up earlier in an interview with Matt McFarland that Norm Pattis is usually quite visible whenever Fotis Dulos is in the news, but today he is out of state with another client. His colleagues we have seen, Kevin Smith, who also has the ponytail, if you want to recognize, and this other attorney all the way to the right, that is Chris Latronica. He's also on the legal team. He did not speak today. The other attorney was Kevin Smith, who all the way to the left is Rich Colangelo. This is the state's attorney who is, of course, prosecuting the case.
And Kevin Smith did take the microphone earlier today. He did not confirm Fotis Dulos had died. That was at a time where multiple sources had confirmed to the media via official sources that Fotis Dulos was dead. At that point, Norm Pattis had issued his own statement saying that his heart went out to Fotis's children and what a horrible day it was. At that moment, Kevin had not said anything, and whether or not he didn't want to confirm that he was dead or he wasn't sure. But now the events have changed, and that we understand from the defense team, emergency personnel had found a pulse, and he was en route to the hospital.
Norm Pattis released a very brief statement. Here it is. I am told Mr. Dulos is en route to the hospital with a pulse. Our thoughts and prayers are with him. Of course, we got this a little over an hour ago.
And that was after he had said it was a truly sad and shocking day when Norm Pattis had been notified about the presumed death of Fotis Dulos. So much has changed since about 12:05 this afternoon.
And you have to think about the Fotis Dulos children today. There are 5 of them.
Yes.
Of course, they lost their mother a year ago. We don't know exactly what they've been told about this and what kind of access they have to the news coverage of it. And now they hear today that the father, whom they have not seen since last May.
His condition of his bond was also that he would not be allowed
Exactly.
to have
He's not allowed to
contact
talk to
with his
them.
children. So all of the evidence that has been released in this case, up until this point, we had seen a very confident defense attorney of Norm Pattis saying the state's case was weak. We had seen Fotis Dulos nicely dressed, smiling at reporters, saying that he just cares about his children. And now this dramatic turn of events since this last revision of the bond and the financial difficulties that were coming to light. And this, for sure, we know that there was at least an attempted suicide. What we're unclear of at this hour, 2:30 in the afternoon, as we await this press conference, was he or will he be successful in that suicide attempt? Apparently his life is hanging in the balance.
Yeah, the pressure on a suspect like that, you know, he's facing this mountain of evidence, harsh media coverage in terms of like criticism by some of the people about him. He's not allowed to work. And now today was, as we know, was not going to be a good day for him. It could have ended with him being thrown back into prison.
And this is something that police, Lieutenant Vance rather, had been telling us, that the police, the Farmington police will be there to examine the suicide scene. That's why you saw the tarps and the tents and all the pictures and tape, and that was things will be done. That will be treated as its own crime scene. But the murder case for the presumed murder of Jennifer Farber Dulos is still underway. There are still two other co-conspirators in this case. We don't know anything about the whereabouts or comments of Michelle Troconis, who was able to post bond after she was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. We know that Kent Mawhinney is in prison, so he obviously can't release his own comments.
That's Kevin Smith all the way to the right, who spoke earlier today. That's one of his attorneys.
Yes, and he came to the podium just after the bond hearing.
Yes.
It was interesting, as Matt McFarland was down at Sanford Superior Court, the information of what had happened in Farmington needed to filter down to the court, and the bond hearing had to be suspended, the cameras taken down. It even took some time for all of those who were in the know to find out what had just transpired at that Farmington home.
Let's run you that sound that we have with Kevin Smith. He spoke very briefly to reporters, including Channel 3's Matt McFarland earlier today. Let's listen.
As I understand it, he is being taken to Yukon Health Center, and that's really, at this point, all that we know.
He walked away from reporters and said very little. And that's all we learned from him today.
So we have just been hearing from police that there is going to be a news conference probably in about 5 minutes from now. We'd heard about 2:30, and now I'm hearing that that is definitely going to happen very shortly.
And we just got some breaking news. Our producers telling us that state police are confirming that Lifestar helicopter will transport Fotis Dulos, presumably to another hospital. We just don't know where at this point, and that should be happening
and likely that can be from the Yukon Medical Center. This is not confirmed, but it would be very normal for Lifestar helicopter to transport from Yukon to Hartford Hospital, where they do have level 1 trauma care.
Indeed. So we're going to have to wait and get some confirmation on that, or some more details on that from police. State police are confirming that that is going to be happening. We are awaiting a news conference. We're told that they would be talking to reporters at about 2:30 this afternoon, but
And we are hearing that that news conference is set to begin pretty soon, and we'll hear some official information from the state police. Not that what we have had up until this point, we want to make clear to the viewers, we were very careful not to report information until it was confirmed to us, but it was confirmed at one point that Fotis Dulos had died. And then we had different information coming from his defense team, which Lieutenant Vance said can happen in those life-saving attempts en route to a hospital.
The Fotis Dulos case began on Memorial Day weekend of last year. That Friday, Jennifer Dulos was last seen after she dropped off her children at a school in New Canaan. And later that evening, it was reported by her friends reported her missing to police.
Hearts have been breaking ever since that time. Fotis Dulos, of course, in our system is innocent until proven guilty, but there was one thing that everyone could be united about, and just how horrible it was for these 5 children who are now in the care of their grandmother, and how awful this has been for them. Earlier, the Jennifer Farber Dulos' family had issued a statement about how grateful they were for the tenacity of law enforcement in staying with this case.
You know, there were some viewers I noticed who posted they were very disappointed to hear that he had committed suicide when it first broke, because they said, well, we'll never know where Jennifer Dulos' body is. And if Fotis Dulos does indeed know that secret, he would be taken to the grave. So a lot of people were wondering what would happen to the case after that. But he's alive, and we know that he's going to be transported to another hospital, leaving UConn Health Center shortly via Lifestar helicopter.
Let's go out to Channel 3's Eva Zamaros, who's outside Fotis Dulos' home in Farmington, where she has been for much of the day and on all of these pivotal days. Eva?
Well, guys, we are awaiting that news conference from Farmington Police. It's supposed to be happening any minute now, but we do know that Farmington Police will be addressing all of the reporters that are here outside of Fotis Dulos' Jefferson Crossing home here in Farmington. I'm actually going to step out of the way just to kind of paint the scene of how things look. I know that a lot of stuff has changed just in the last 2.5 hours or so. So if we could just kind of take a quick peek. So this is Jefferson Crossing. Fotis Dulos' home is directly straight in front of us. It's that brick home that you can see. There's a Farmington police officer that's parked near the entrance of Jefferson Crossing. And it's a little hard to see from this vantage point, but there are a number of state police cars and cruisers that are parked directly across from Fotis Dulos' home. I think when I was on the other side of the street, I saw about 5 or 6 of them. But again, the scene has changed dramatically since about noontime, when my coworker Courtney Zeller saw that massive response here from the fire department, state and local police, UConn, the ambulance.
Who's granted permission to cross state lines to pick up her daughter at JFK Airport. December 12th. Attorney Norm Pattis argues to end the gag order he says is hurting his client's chances of a fair trial. While he can't talk about the case, Fotis Dulos does, again, talk about his desire to reunite with his children.
I will not stop fighting for our right to be a family.
The day after Christmas, Dulos asks a judge to dismiss his divorce case with Jennifer Dulos, indicating his intention to seek custody of his children through juvenile court. I'm Dennis House, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Yes, and of course, the new developments today are that Fotis Dulos tried to commit suicide today as he was expected in court for an emergency bond hearing. There was a technical problem with his bond, and it's possible he could have gone to court today and been thrown back behind bars. He was found in his garage, one of his garage bays of his Farmington mansion at just about noontime today by Farmington police. They administered CPR, and then moments later, it was announced multiple sources said he was dead. Media organizations reported he was dead. Later, it turned out that he had a pulse and he was alive. He was taken to the UConn Health Center, where he was then flown by Lifestar helicopter to a hyperbaric chamber in New York, Jacobi Medical Center in the Bronx. We're told by Tony Aiello, my colleague at WCBS TV, it is one of the best in the business for this. This is where firefighters who have been injured, who've suffered lung injuries, go there, because apparently the folks who work on these type of diseases and these type of setbacks are just the best in the business. That according to Tony Aiello of Channel 2 WCBS TV in New York. We, of course, will continue our breaking news coverage of this breaking news story. A shocking day on television. It's coming up next on Eyewitness News at 4:30, and I'll see you back here at 5 o'clock.
Live from WFSB, Connecticut's #1 local news, this is Channel 3 Eyewitness News at 4:30.
Right now at 4:30, we continue our breaking news coverage, a shocking twist in the Jennifer Dulos murder investigation.
Fotis Dulos right now in critical condition after an apparent suicide attempt at his home in Farmington. We have been bringing you live updates all afternoon, and we're the first to tell you about when it happened. This is a look at drone 3 video that was captured above Fotis Dulos' Farmington home on Jefferson Crossing. This is in the moments after police were sent to his home for a welfare check, discovered him in distress, and started administering CPR. Here are some of the latest developments. He was exposed because of that attempted suicide to carbon monoxide in the garage.
Now, Dulos just arrived at Jacoby Medical Center in the Bronx in New York City with a pulse. We're told he's now listed in critical condition. This afternoon, we do have team coverage on every angle of this investigation. We start with Channel 3's Courtney Zeller. Courtney?
Well, Mark and Aaron, you know, we are at the Jefferson Crossing home here in Farmington. Now, we originally came here this morning because we are expecting him to leave for his court appearance, which was in Stamford. It was that emergency bond hearing, but he should have left. It was like 11 o'clock when I got here, and I know Stamford is not close to Farmington, so he should have left prior to that. You could see right now that it's still a very active scene. Local and state police are here. But if we can go to that video now, police arrived and noticed him in distress after someone called them to check on him because he didn't leave yet for his court appearance. So when they noticed him in distress, they brought him outside and had him on the pavement performing CPR. They did this for at least 10 minutes. Then ambulances showed up. Drone 3 shows you tarps and tents set up as crews were performing compressions. I was watching this all unfold on our Drone 3 camera. Now, when they arrived, they tell us they saw Fotis Dulos through the garage window and was in distress inside one of his vehicles. They believe he tried to commit suicide by carbon monoxide. Take a listen at what Farmington police had to say.
When officers responded, they could see through a window that Mr. Dulos was sitting in his vehicle and he had obvious signs of medical distress. Officers forced entry and immediately began to perform life-saving measures.
Okay, just checking. Are we coming up this way?
Well, state and local police, as you see here, if you're coming back out live to us, are still on the scene. They say they expect to be here for quite some time. They told us that this afternoon. So, of course, any new developments we get from them, we will bring to you immediately. But for now, we're live at the mobile newsroom in Farmington. Courtney Zeller, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Courtney, thank you very much. Our team coverage continues right now as we head to UConn Health.
And that's where we find Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Mike Savino. Mike, Fotis left UConn Health Center in Farmington by Lifestar just a short time ago. We did bring that to you live. He was taken to UConn Health initially because it's just a couple of miles from his Farmington mansion. We watched as he was taken from an ambulance with a white sheet covering him and then brought onto that Lifestar helicopter, which eventually made its way to the Bronx and Jacoby Medical Center. What can you tell us about the situation there right now?
Well, obviously things are a lot quieter here now that Dulos is now in the Bronx at the Jacoby Medical Center. It took about a half hour after takeoff from here to get to Jacoby Medical Center. He landed there a little after 4 o'clock. Lifestar took off here around 3:30. It was also here at scene for about a half an hour. It landed just behind me over my shoulder. An ambulance then had to come take a special stretcher from Lifestar, go to the hospital, take Dulos back to the Lifestar and then load him up. Again, that was about a half an hour for that to take place. So there was quite a scene here, obviously, as you can imagine. Media outlets, not just local, but also some from New York, national media, but even just spectators here, drivers coming in and stopping. Traffic was actually stopped, so they're watching. People were coming out of the buildings to watch, so certainly a lot of people stopping to look. I can also tell you, we know Norm Pattis, Dulos' attorney, is out of state on another case, but one of his associates, Kevin Smith, he was actually here earlier. We saw him go in. We did not see him come out, so we've not had a chance to talk with him since. But when he got here, at least what he told me was, you know, he was getting the same information we were, so he was just as confused as we were about what was going on. He didn't seem to know where Dulos was going. He didn't seem to have any more information as far as his status at that point. So certainly a very fast-moving situation. A lot of people still trying to gather information. We're expecting a statement from UConn Health soon about what happened, although they've told us they will not tell. They will be very limited. They're relying on Farmington police to sort of drive what information will come out.
All right, Mike Savino reporting for us live from UConn Health Center in Farmington. Mike, thank you very much. We were just looking at video there of Fotis Dulos, getting a glimpse of him on that stretcher being brought into Jacobi Medical Center. There were some initial reports that he was set to go to Bridgeport Hospital to their hyperbaric chamber. That ended up being untrue. He is now being brought to where he is currently at Jacobi Medical Center to take care of the issues from that carbon monoxide poisoning from the attempted suicide. Obviously, there are so many developments in this case today.
Yeah, there sure are, and our team coverage continues right now with a look at what else everyone is working on.
I'm Susan Raff in Hartford, where a Superior Court judge has decided to suspend the law license of attorney Kent Mawhinney. Mawhinney is one of 3 defendants charged in the murder of Jennifer Farber Dulos. The decision was made because Mawhinney can no longer represent his clients. He remains incarcerated, unable to post bond. He was not in court today, but his attorney was. We asked his attorney about the latest developments regarding Fotis Dulos' attempted suicide, and at this point he told us he cannot comment.
All right, that was Susan Raff reporting. We do want to catch you up right now on what we know as of roughly 4:30 this afternoon.
Fotis is in critical condition at a hospital in the Bronx. As we mentioned, he was first brought to UConn Medical Center in Farmington, which is just a couple of miles away from his mansion. He was then taken by Lifestar. We brought that to you live to Jacobi Medical Center in New York City.
Now, police say he attempted suicide in the garage at his home in Farmington. Once police were on the scene, they performed CPR after seeing him through a window there in the garage. We are told Fotis did discover he had a pulse and again is now listed as critical. Be sure to stay with Eyewitness News all throughout the night.
Hi, everybody. This is Mark Zinni here in the Eyewitness Newsroom, coming to you live on Facebook right now with a brief update on the breaking news story involving Fotis Dulos that we've been following all day long, of course, on Channel 3 and the Channel 3 app. I do want to mention that we are on live right now as well on Channel 3. We're also streaming on the Channel 3 Facebook page right now, the live coverage. Dennis House and Aaron Connolly, Kara Sunland was there for a good part of the day as well, bringing you all the breaking developments, including a press conference with state police that was just held a few minutes ago. You can possibly see the monitor behind me right there. They're on the air right now with that, but a lot of people, of course, maybe you don't have access to a TV right now or something like that. Anyhow, I just thought I'd check in real quick and give you some of the information that we're learning from state police to kind of take you back to the beginning of the day today. We got word about a hearing that was supposed to take place. Connecticut State Police now confirming that the Farmington police did get a phone call earlier this morning regarding a well-being check. A check on Fotis Dulos, who was under house arrest out on bail, of course facing a murder charge in connection with the disappearance of his wife, Jennifer Dulos. She's been missing since May. Again, there was a call for a well-being check earlier this morning. Police now confirming that they showed up at his house this morning and they were able to see through a window in the garage that he was in distress in the garage. They do confirm now it appears to have been a case of carbon monoxide poisoning. They made their way into the garage and they did pull him out and give him CPR and attempt to resuscitate him there at the scene, enough so that he was able to be transferred to UConn Health in Farmington. So that is where he is right now. Now there's a lot of new information coming out this afternoon, a lot of unconfirmed information really about where he may be heading now. Lifestar helicopter was brought to the hospital, so there are some reports he's being moved to a different facility. We're not exactly sure where that is right now. Again, we're hearing a lot of different things. The newsroom is very, very busy right now. We have crews all over the state working to bring you the very latest on this. Again, we are on the air right now on Channel 3 and we'll have live coverage for you again starting at 4:30 tonight. But the bottom line right now, it appears Fotis Dulos is in very critical condition. First responders saying he's technically listed in critical condition right now after attempting to commit suicide in his home earlier this morning. Possibly it looks like he maybe ran his car in the garage with the garage down. I don't personally have that confirmed, but it was a case of carbon monoxide poisoning and he was in the garage and they could see him sitting in the car at the time. So he was supposed to be in court today around noontime for a hearing regarding his $6 million bond. He was just in court again recently because he had gotten in trouble for violating one of the rules set in place about the bond that he was on. You may recall, if you've been following this case, he was in court last week. He had apparently gotten out of a car or tampered with a memorial set up outside his home in Farmington for his wife, Jennifer. The judge said that he was not supposed to be doing anything like that, and Dulos was told at the time if he did anything else whatsoever, his bond would be revoked. So that was all before today, when we then found out he was supposed to be appearing in court again. And just to recap, there was then a call for a well-being check at his home in Farmington. Police showed up at his home earlier this morning, found him in the garage, the door down, apparently suffering from a carbon monoxide poisoning. He was given CPR at the scene and taken to UConn Health in Farmington, which is where he is right now. Obviously, there are a lot of questions right now. We're working to get you many answers. People I see are bringing up his children. Him and his wife Jennifer had 5 children. They are now with her mother in New York City, which is where they've been for several months. He was facing litigation from Jennifer's family regarding business loans, not to mention the murder charge, the evidence tampering charges, a whole host of problems here. His former girlfriend, Michelle Traconis, is also out on bond right now. We're working to try and see exactly where she is this afternoon, if anyone has checked in on her. And Kent Mawhinney, a third defendant in this case, a lawyer and friend of Fotis Dulos, is, if I remember correctly, he did not make bond, so he's still in custody right now after he was initially arrested a few weeks ago. I'm hearing rumblings in the newsroom right now about Lifestar helicopters taking off again soon, or patients being moved, or a patient. So a lot going on. Again, you can join our live coverage right now on Channel 3. We'll keep streaming it on the Channel 3 app and the Channel 3 Facebook page. But stay with us here on Channel 3. All right, I'm going to take you over here. Hold on. So this is our live coverage right here. I'm going to show you. This is our live coverage right now on Channel 3. And you can see this is earlier today. That was outside the house. This right here is the Lifestar helicopter. This is live, parked outside UConn Health. And we're getting reports that an ambulance is making its way over right now. So we're just going to see what's happening. This is live outside the hospital again in Farmington. This is also live right now on Channel 3. So if you're near a television, you can watch there as well. This helicopter landed here probably 30 minutes or so ago, and we got word that they would be transferring him. Again, we're getting reports that he's being moved maybe somewhere in Connecticut, also possibly somewhere out of state. You can see the UConn ambulance backing up right here. Emergency personnel getting out of the ambulance. And you have to bear with me. I do not know if anyone is in here. I'm not quite sure at this point. We're all going to find out together. Paramedics there with what appears to be an oxygen tank. Again, this is live outside UConn Health in Farmington. An ambulance landed here a little while ago after a suicide attempt by Fotis Dulos, who had been arrested and charged with murder recently in connection with the disappearance of his wife, Jennifer Dulos. They have 5 children together. Those 5 children are now with her mother in New York City. Jennifer has not been seen since May. All right, at this point, it did not appear that anyone was in that vehicle or in that ambulance at this point. In the ambulance, it looked like they were just moving, equipment from out of the ambulance. I'm not quite sure what's happening, so let's go back here. It appears that they're going to perhaps hold up they're going to hold a sheet up, it appears, and try and cover him as he makes his way over to the ambulance, perhaps. I see some individuals mentioning that earlier today it was reported by every media outlet, I believe, that he was in fact dead. Several sources notified the media about that, saying that. All right, it appears he's on the other side of that sheet right there, obviously being moved over to the helicopter. His condition is considered critical right now after a suicide attempt this morning at his home in Farmington. Emergency personnel about to move him into a helicopter. Lifestar to take him to another facility. Obviously a lot of police there, medical personnel. We were later told he had a very faint pulse and was considered critical.
Can you let Equipment Center know? Because it is a new thing unless they don't need to know.
All right, some are right now trying to confirm exactly where he's going. We are getting reports that it's a hospital in New York. All right, that would be an empty, obviously. It appears that perhaps they moved him onto a different stretcher that's going to go into the helicopter. His attorney, Norm Pattis, issued a brief statement a few hours ago saying that he had a very weak pulse. Of course, Fotis Dulos has been in and out of custody, in and out of jail for some time now. Initially charged with other crimes in connection with her disappearance, then ultimately charged with murder. I believe that was about 2 weeks ago. Was able to post bond, several $1 million. This is airing live right now on Channel 3, also the Channel 3 app. All right, it appears that they are prepping him on the other side of that sheet right there to move him into the helicopter. Farmington Police, Connecticut State Police saying in a short press briefing a little while ago that they obviously have a lot of unanswered questions right now about what happened this morning and what may have prompted this. But at this point, they're going to put him in the back of this Lifestar helicopter, where he will then be taken to a different facility. Again, at this point right now, they're continuing their investigation at his Farmington home, where he tried to take his life earlier this morning, a few hours before he was supposed to appear in court again regarding his bond. A call was made for a well-being check on him, and that's when police discovered through a window that he was in the garage at the time, apparently suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning, and they were able to perform CPR on him and transfer him to Yukon in Farmington, and now he's being moved into a Life Star to be taken to another hospital. So it's almost 3:30 right now. You can see our live coverage is continuing on Channel 3, and we will continue to have more coverage for you on the Channel 3 app and on WFSB.com, and of course throughout the newscast on Channel 3. We will keep asking questions and see what we can find out for everybody, because I see a lot of you have questions right here, and certainly a lot of people have very strong opinions about Fotis Dulos, and feel free to express them. But again, we will have live coverage for you throughout the afternoon and starting at 4:30 right here on Channel 3. All right, everybody.
And as for that investigation at Fotis Dulos' home in Farmington, News 12 Connecticut's John Craven is there now with the very latest. John.
Well, Lauren, we've seen police coming in and out of this neighborhood all morning long. At some point this afternoon, we are expecting them to execute a search warrant here, but as of now, police say they have not been able to enter Fotis Dulos' home just yet. Now, we mentioned this all started yesterday morning after the judge called an emergency hearing to revoke Fotis Dulos' bond and perhaps send him back to jail. That's because this house here in Farmington is now under foreclosure, and Fotis Dulos had claimed, according to court paperwork, that his other home in New Canaan was worth $325,000 more than it actually is. Those two factors combined led an insurance company to ask the judge to revoke Dulos' bond. Now, back out here at the scene, again, you can see well behind us there is a mobile command center. Police are hoping to get inside the house to start searching later on this afternoon. Of course, the big question out here and on everyone's mind is, did Fotis Dulos leave a suicide note? At this point, we simply do not know. That is the latest here in Farmington this afternoon. John Craven, News 12, Connecticut.